Chapter 36:51. I believe that it won't be long before we become inner palace disciples. When that time comes, we will definitely be noticed by others when we use this healing medicine. Moreover, senior brother Run and the others will also encounter this problem when they train in the inner palace. If it is just a coincidence, the amount will not be much. If they have been using it, it will be easy to be suspected by others. In this way, if they lose their teammates because of this, it will be a big loss. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke slowly, clearly, and softly. Beichun, do you think what I said is right? Di Beichun took a deep look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's words were reasonable, he still felt that something was wrong. This was not in line with Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament. There must be other reasons. He and Bailey Hongzhuang had known each other and been in love for many years. It could be said that he knew her temperament very well. Therefore, he could guess the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang did this just by thinking about it carefully. It was just that there were so many people here now, it was not convenient for him to say it. Since you had decided, I will support you. Di Beichun's voice was magnetic and gentle. His gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang was even more affectionate. When Zyra nodded, I think what Hongzhuang said is quite reasonable. This kind of thing can be hidden forever. Since it will be known sooner or later, there is no need to hide it. We are now so unpopular in Penglai Palace. If everyone knows that Hongzhuang has such ability, I think our popularity in Penglai Palace will be completely changed in the future. Listening to Zyron's words, Ren Zimei couldn't help but chuckle. This is true. Once this news is spread out, it will definitely shock the entire Penglai Palace. At that time, I am afraid that not only Penglai Palace, but the entire Penglai Island will be shocked by this news. I believe that at that time, everyone will definitely think that it is a very wise choice for Master Long to recruit you back. You will really be famous. Zimei, actually, they have always been quite famous in the Penglai Palace. Chu Jinfeng raised his eyebrows. There was a hint of mockery in his smile. In the history of Penglai Palace, not many people have become as famous as Junior Brother D and the others. Everyone laughed. After they finished talking about the important matters, they began to chat while drinking. Master, why did you suddenly decide to reveal this matter? Xiaohei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. This doesn't fit your personality. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes darkened. Since Duan Huali has been looking for trouble, Beichun will definitely confront him directly. With our current strength, if we fight with Duan Huali too early, I'm afraid it won't do us any good. At the very least, we can't do anything while we're in Penglai Palace. If I spread this news, my status will naturally be different from before. Even the Hall Master will pay more attention to me. In this way, if Duan Huali still wants to attack us, then he will have to think carefully. Since Duan Huali wanted to cause trouble for them so much, then she would frustrate Duan Huali's spirit so that he wouldn't have the guts to come again. So that's how it is. Xiaohei suddenly understood. If Duan Huali is not a madman, presumably after knowing all this, he will not dare to cause trouble. But Master, do you plan to let Duan Huali go just like that? Chapter 36:52. After getting Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Xiaohei was relieved. This was their master's usual temperament. It would be strange if she let Duan Huali go just like that. Junior Sister Bailey, since you have agreed, we will no longer keep it a secret if they ask about the healing medicine in the future. Ren Ziheng stared at Bailey Hongzhuang and asked again. Bailey Hongzhuang's decision really gave them a lot of convenience. After all, they had known their teammates from the Inner Palace for many years. For such a long time, they had cooperated with each other in the face of the skeleton army. Their trust could be said to be extremely high. It was not convenient for them to keep lying to everyone. After all, the lies would be exposed one day. However, they did not want Bailey Hongzhuang to make such a decision because of them. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Then Junior Sister Bailey has to be prepared. As we release this news, I'm afraid that it won't be long before everyone comes looking for you. At that time, you will definitely become the most popular person in Penglai Palace. However, there will also be some corresponding trouble. Ren Zimei reminded aloud. Looking at Ren Zimei's worried look, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually softened. Her sexy red lips curled up slightly. Senior Sister Ren, You don't have to worry about me. This situation, I am no stranger to it. Her double identity as a doctor and an alchemist made her very popular in the past. No matter when or where, as long as someone knew about it, she would never be deserted. Although she did not like to be so high profile, in fact, she was no stranger to such a situation. Hearing this, Rinzime was slightly stunned. However, when she thought of Bailey Hongzhuang's ability, she understood and immediately nodded. Oh, right. I forgot. With junior sister Bailey's ability, there must be many people looking for you. Of course. Shangguan Yingying smiled faintly. When we were in the Magic Tower, the situation was also very lively. In that case, I am relieved. Ren Ziheng relaxed a little. I was a little worried at first, but from the looks of it, you should have adapted to this situation long ago. Chu Jinfeng's eyes lit up. When I first saw you, I felt that the four of you were not simple. Later, when I found out that you were cultivators recruited by Master Long, I understood. But now, it seems that no one knows your true strength. Now I really admire Master Long's vision. No wonder he's willing to take out 3 precious contract beasts. With Master Long's usual temperament, that's absolutely impossible. My master never disappoints anyone. Xiao Hei jumped onto the table, her round little face filled with pride. Chu Jinfeng glanced at Xiao Hei. Junior sister Bailey, not only are your abilities extraordinary, even your contracted beast is extraordinary. Why have I never heard of such a contracted beast before? Back then, I had contracted them by chance. But they are indeed very good. Bailey Hongzhuang reached out and patted Xiao Hei's head. She remembered that when she had first transmigrated, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai had always been by her side. All these years, the 3 beasts had accompanied her on her adventures and had suffered countless injuries. However, they had always been very loyal to her. Chapter 3653. When everyone came out of the restaurant, the sky was already dark. Under the light, the shadows of the 7 people were elongated. As soon as they returned to the room, Di Beichun closed the door and took Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows in surprise. Beichun, Di Beichun exerted a little force with his right hand and directly pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms. One hand circled around her slender waist, and he lowered his head slightly, closing the distance between him and Bailey Hongzhuang. My wife, tell me, why did you suddenly decide to tell me this news? This doesn't fit your personality. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and saw Di Beichun's face almost touching hers. His warm breath scattered on her face, revealing a hint of ambiguity and panic. Didn't I already tell you the reason? Staring at Di Beichun's deep and penetrating eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang inexplicably felt a little guilty. She couldn't help but look away when she answered. My wife, do you know that every time you hide something from me, you won't meet my eyes? Di Beichun's magnetic voice slowly sounded, revealing a bewitching aura. However, it made Bailey Hongzhuang feel even more guilty. She always knew that she could deceive many people, but she couldn't deceive Di Beichun. He was always so smart and farsighted. Even if it was just a small movement, he would be able to find clues. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyelids drooped slightly, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. Her white fingers under her sleeves couldn't help but gradually clench. She wanted to explain something, but she felt that Di Beichun had already seen through everything. She was afraid that her explanation would be meaningless. Looking at the guilt and worry that flashed across the flawless face, Di Beichun couldn't help but sigh. His left hand covered Bailey Hongzhuang's white and tender face, making her raise her head and stare into his eyes. My wife, you must be doing this for me again. His deep and pleasant voice was a little hoarse, and that certain tone seemed to have already determined everything. You are worried that I will directly confront the Duan Huali, so you plan to spread this news. In this way, your status in the outer hall will be improved. Even if the Duan Huali wants to cause trouble again, he will have to think twice. At least in this Penglai palace, he won't dare to attack us easily. Am I right? Di Beichun's handsome eyes were full of affection and heartache, and there was a trace of undetectable pain in the depths of his eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang looked into Di Beichun's eyes. When she saw the latter's frown, She couldn't help but reach out her hand to smooth his brows. Bei-chun, there's indeed such a reason for me to do this. However, I am also right. This matter will be known by everyone sooner or later. There is not much difference between knowing earlier and later. Bailey Hongzhuang said softly. No matter what, Duan Huali is still an inner hall disciple. If he finds an inner hall disciple to deal with us, it will not be good for us. I believe in you. As long as you're given a little more time, this Duan Huali will not be able to do anything. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's careful words of comfort, Di Beichun's eyes became deeper and deeper. At the same time, there was a trace of anger and heartache. He hugged Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms. My wife, you are so considerate of me. I feel guilty in my heart. In the end, I failed to protect you and made you worry about me. Chapter 36:54. Looking at Di Beichun's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel a little distressed. Ever since she had been together with Di Beichun, Beichun had always done his best to protect her. Even when they were dealing with the Yu clan, Di Beichun had always been protecting her when they went to the Lan clan. From the time when she was just an ordinary young miss of the general's residence until now, Di Beichun had played too many roles behind her back. It was just that the cursed body had shackled him for a very long time, making it difficult for him to increase his strength. Now that his physique had improved with great difficulty, the enemies they had encountered were also getting stronger and stronger. She didn't want Di Beichun to bear all of this on his body. To him, it was also a kind of heavy pressure. We are originally husband and wife. We have already made a vow that no matter what danger we face, we will definitely support each other. Since we are supporting each other, how can I let you protect me blindly? Moreover, this matter is not troublesome to me at all. It is also a good thing that I can show my value in this Penglai palace earlier. Di Beichun's eyes, which were as bright as the stars, were covered with a layer of deep and complicated light. In his heart, he secretly made up his mind that Duan Huali, this kind of trouble, he would definitely personally resolve it. Previously, because of his cursed body, it was difficult for him to increase his strength. Now that his physique had changed, the speed of his cultivation was also different from before. He must increase his strength as soon as possible. Only then could he protect the people he wanted to protect and not let the people he cared about worry. Di Beichun's deep eyes gradually restrained his emotions. Only then did he let go of Bailey Hongzhuang and slowly move closer to the latter's face. Wife, I love you. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart suddenly jumped, but the corners of her lips curled up slightly. That pair of clear and bright eyes were already filled with tenderness and sweetness. Her red lips parted slightly. I love you too. The gentle words made Di Beichun feel as if his heart was being scratched by a kitten. His heart was burning. The confession of his true love had always been irresistible. In the next moment, Di Beichun directly covered Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips. That soft and fragrant lips made his heart sway, and he could no longer control himself. Bailey Hongzhuang's hands slowly wrapped around Di Beichun's neck. Facing the other's kiss, she responded passionately. As his body temperature gradually rose, Di Beichun turned around and put Bailey Hongzhuang on the bed. The window curtains swayed gently, and tenderness. The next day, a piece of news came out. The inner disciples are it all, and all of them wanted to find the source. It's strange. I heard that this healing medicine was made by Bailey Hongzhuang. That's just too unbelievable. I wonder if it's a mistake. I also think it's very likely to be a mistake. How old is Bailey Hongzhuang? There are so many famous pharmacists and doctors in 100 Flowers Gate who can't even make a healing medicine. How could she possibly make one? For a moment, the cultivators in the outer palace discussed spiritedly. However, almost everyone was certain that this news was fake because it was just too unbelievable. In reality, when Ren Ziheng and the other two revealed the true nature of the healing medicine, the inner palace disciples were also unwilling to believe it. Chapter 36:55. Jing Tianlang. I lied to you before when I told you that it was from a young man because I didn't get junior sister Bailey's permission. We just happened to run into junior sister Bailey yesterday, so we told her about it. We only told you about it after she agreed. If we wanted to deceive you, the story we made up before would be enough. Why should we seek trouble for ourselves? Rin Ziheng felt rather helpless. Everyone believed him when he lied earlier, but no one believed him when he told the truth now. He had no idea whether to laugh or cry. Jing Tianlang could not help but recall that he had indeed seen Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in the restaurant yesterday. His face changed as he asked in disbelief, "Is that true?" "Of course." Ren Ziheng nodded. "If I'm lying to you about something like that, you can just verify it. What's the point of lying to you?" Jing Tianlang, "My brother really isn't lying to you." Rinzime felt rather helpless as well. In reality, she had considered this possibility before. It was just like how they did not think much of Bailey Hongzhuang when she gave them the medicine, because Bailey Hongzhuang was just too young. No one would have imagined that a young woman like her could create medicine like that, so it was very normal for her to be doubted. Jing Tianlang glanced at Rin Ziheng, Rinzime, and Chu Jinfeng. His lips twitched when he saw how serious they were. That's just too unbelievable. We were the same back then." Chu Jinfeng spread his hands. "If you ask me, I'd say that junior sister Bailey really is a genius. She's only done a little research on the power of darkness, yet she's able to create such an effective medicine. I even think that if she stayed in the inner hall for a while longer, would she be able to create a medicine that completely counters the power of darkness?" As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of Rin Ziheng and the others couldn't help but change. They secretly pondered in their hearts and felt that it wasn't impossible. "What you said has really broadened my horizons." Jing Tianlang sighed. No wonder Master Long paid such a high price to recruit them. It turns out that Bailey Hongzhuang is such an amazing doctor. Chu Jinfeng nodded. Master Long is someone like that. His vision is naturally extraordinary. A cultivator that he values so much is definitely extraordinary. I wonder if you can buy some medicine for me? Last time at the training ground, there was some animosity between us. If I ask them for help, I'm afraid they won't be willing to sell me the medicine." Jing Tianlang frowned. Back then, he did not know that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had such a background. At that time, he had no choice but to do so. However, his words were rather radical, and he did not consider Bailey Hongzhuang's situation. After that, he did not explain much. After all, in his opinion, there was no need to explain anything to the Outer Palace disciples. In Penglai Palace, only Inner Palace disciples were core disciples. Outer Palace disciples did not have any status before they became Inner Palace disciples. Chapter 3656. Back then, he had wanted to apologize to Bailey Hongzhuang, but he thought that she would not accept his apology after he understood their identities. Moreover, even though Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were people that Master Long thought highly of, they were not related to him in any way. It would not be a big deal even if they did not contact each other in the future. However, now that he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang could make such effective healing medicine, he could not maintain the same attitude as before. He had not apologized or explained himself for so long. If he were in Bailey Hongzhuang's shoes, he probably would not have bothered either. If that was the case, the situation would be awkward. Jing Tianlang could not help but regret it. If he had known this would happen, he would have established a good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Then, he would have been able to enjoy the same treatment as Rin Ziheng and the others. He did not need to think to know that it would not be difficult for Rin Ziheng and the others to obtain the healing medicine. The medicine from before was given to them by Bailey Hongzhuang. Rin Ziheng and the others could not help but look at each other when they heard Jing Tianlang's words. In particular, Rin Zime immediately understood. Jing Tianlang, I've already told you where the medicine came from. If you need it, it's better for you to get it yourself. If we buy the medicine for you this time, I'm afraid that other cultivators will follow suit in the future. If that happens, we'll be in trouble. I'm sure you understand. Rin Ziheng's expression was serious, and his attitude was resolute. To him, it was already good enough that he had told Jing Tianlang this news. Naturally, he would not help him with anything else. In my opinion, Junior Sister Bailey and the others are not narrow-minded people. Although what you did last time was a little overboard, I'm sure they won't mind if you apologize properly, Chu Jinfeng said slowly. Jing Tianlan's expression was still complicated. He then nodded helplessly. All right, I'll give it a try. As soon as Jing Tianlang heard the news, the other cultivators heard the news as well. When they first heard the news, almost all of them thought it was a misunderstanding. However, after receiving confirmation, they gradually believed it. However, the shock in their hearts did not dissipate. However, just as the cultivators were thinking about how to ask Bailey Hongzhuang for the medicine, Bailey Hongzhuang released the news that she had gone into closed-door cultivation. Everyone could not help but be stunned when they heard this. None of them had expected Bailey Hongzhuang to make such a decision. It was just too unexpected. Bailey Hongzhuang has gone into closed-door cultivation. What should we do now? Since she can go into seclusion, there will naturally be a day when she comes out. We just have to wait. But the biggest problem is that although we know that this healing medicine was made by Bailey Hongzhuang, none of us know if Bailey Hongzhuang is willing to sell it or not. The medicine that Ren Ziheng and the others have was given to them by Bailey Hongzhuang. They didn't buy it. You're right. We don't usually have any relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang. I'm afraid it won't be easy to get close to her at a time like this. Chapter 36:57. Why did Junior's sister Bailey choose to go into seclusion at this time? When Ren Zimei heard the news, she couldn't help but be stunned. They had only released the news after getting Junior's sister Bailey's permission. However, the latter had decided to go into seclusion at this time, which made her a little puzzled. Looking at Ren Zimei's confused look, Ren Ziheng couldn't help but chuckle. You don't have to worry. Junior's sister Bailey chose to go into seclusion at this time is not a wise choice. Hearing this, Ren Zimei raised her eyebrows, and her eyes were full of surprise. Big brother, what do you mean by this? Think about it carefully. If Junior Marshall's sister Bailey was so easily found by everyone today, then it wouldn't be right for us to give her the medicine, but it also wouldn't be right for us to not give it to her. Now that Junior's sister Bailey had gone into seclusion, the other cultivators couldn't help but talk about this matter. If it was before, they could still keep it a secret and not leak the news, but as time gradually passed, everyone naturally couldn't hold back their temper. As a result, the number of cultivators who know about this will definitely increase greatly, and the effect of publicity will be there. Since Junior's sister Bailey chose to release this news, naturally not a small number of people know about it. Now the longer she goes into seclusion, the greater the influence will naturally be. Now I admire them more and more. Ren Ziheng's eyes flashed with a bright light. Now that he thought about it, it was really good that he could become friends with Di Beiqian and others. Not to mention their strength, just their brains were already a great weapon. Ren Zimei, who was very puzzled by this situation, suddenly understood, and her eyes flashed with a thick light of amazement. So that's how it is, big brother. I really didn't think of this. This is where they are smart. Ren Ziheng glanced at Ren Zimei and said helplessly, You have to use your brain more often, otherwise you can't continue like this. I know. Ren Zimei curled her lips. Although she didn't think that she was very smart, she didn't think that she was stupid, but now compared with Bailey Hongzhuang and others, she really felt that she wasn't smart enough. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. The news spread like wildfire. Immediately, most of the cultivators in Penglai Palace knew about it. Almost everyone was looking forward to Bailey Hongzhuang coming out of her closed-door training as soon as possible. This way, they would be able to witness the effects of the healing medicine with their own eyes. While many of the inner palace disciples began to think about how to build a good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, the outer palace cultivators' thoughts became extremely complicated. In the outer palace, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three didn't have any friends. Other than A.O. Lingxiao, who was close to them a few days ago, they didn't interact with anyone else. Many cultivators did not go looking for trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others out of respect for Master Long. However, this news was no different from a heavy bomb to them. Although no one knew exactly how effective the healing medicine was, they could tell from the fervent expressions of the inner palace disciples that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had become extremely popular in such a short period of time. This was not a good thing for them. Chapter 3658. Following the ferment of this matter, the Outer Palace disciples had completely given up on finding trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. On the contrary, they could only hope that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would not cause trouble for them. Previously, with Lord Long around, they could not afford to offend these four people. Now that they had an additional identity, if Bailey Hongzhuang were to use this healing medicine to ask the Inner Palace disciples for help, they would not refuse at all. That would be very frightening. Ever since Peng Karue had chosen to give up, Duan Huali had ignored him. He understood that after this incident, Duan Huali probably did not intend to pay any attention to him. However, he did not regret his choice. After all, even if he succeeded, he might not be able to obtain Lord Long's contract beast. The price of failure was not something he could bear. Duan Huali was only so persistent because he could not take it lying down. However, he did not embarrass himself in front of everyone, so he did not mind. However, not long after he had chosen to give up, the news that Bailey Hongzhuang was a doctor spread. He could not help but be shocked, especially when he heard that Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine could effectively restrain dark energy. His heart could be said to be in a perilous situation. This was something that he had never thought of. However, when so many people had confirmed it, he had no choice but to believe it. Thinking of this, he was a little flustered and a little glad. He was flustered because he had previously sent Xue Changdong to cause trouble for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He was glad that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not know that he was the mastermind behind this incident. Besides, he had now completely given up on this matter. Naturally, he no longer had to worry about being implicated. It was a good thing that he had given up early on. He was all too aware of the allure of a powerful doctor. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was willing, she could use this to recruit many cultivators to work for her. In this way, even if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were only Outer Palace disciples, it would not be difficult for them to deal with some Inner Palace disciples. After thinking about it, Peng Karue decided to remind Duan Huali. After all, they had known each other for so many years. He did not want to destroy this friendship. Duan Huali, have you heard the news that Bailey Hongzhuang is a doctor? Seeing Peng Karue's appearance, Duan Huali's eyes flashed with coldness. His voice was low and indifferent. I just heard it. What's wrong? If what everyone said is true, then she absolutely cannot be touched. Peng Karue said, once Bailey Hongzhuang comes out of seclusion and this news is confirmed, she will be the most popular person in Penglai Palace. Whoever dares to provoke her is asking for trouble. I advise you to stop while they still don't know. Otherwise, it will be too late in the future. Hearing this, Duan Huali could not help but chuckle. I am not as useless as you. Now it is said that Bailey Hongzhuang is a doctor, not Di Beichen. What I want is Di Beichen to die. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang has this ability, I am even happier because once Bailey Hongzhuang becomes my woman, then her ability will be used by me. At that time, the Inner Palace disciples will have to be respectful to me. Chapter 3659. I don't need you to worry about me. Duan Huali shouted coldly, his eyes full of disgust. Don't worry, if I really fall, I will definitely not say your name. Duan Huali, that's not what I meant. Peng Karue frowned. He only felt that Duan Huali was becoming more and more irrational. Although he was also lustful in the past, he would not be so irrational. At least in the past, Duan Huali knew what kind of person he could not touch, but now he was irrationally obsessed with this point. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was indeed much stronger than the women in the past, his actions were still too stupid. If that's not what I meant, then what do you mean? Duan Huali's eyes were full of haze and coldness. I have known you for many years, but I never knew that you were actually so timid. I naturally have my own reasons for doing this. People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. You don't have to say anything more. Peng Karue, who originally wanted to say something, could not help but shake his head after seeing Duan Huali's firm attitude. Since you have already said so, I believe that no matter what I say, it will be useless. Then, I wish you good luck. After finishing his words, Peng Karue did not look at Duan Huali again. He turned around and left the room. People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Duan Huali even said such words. It meant that he had directly cut off all their years of friendship. At this point, if he continued to advise Duan Huali, it would be equivalent to him being shameless. From now on, no matter what situation Duan Huali was in, he would no longer have anything to do with him. Looking at Pankarue's back as he left, the disdain in Duan Huali's eyes became more and more intense. It's fine if you are as timid as a mouse, but you want me to be the same. Do you know that a large part of the reason why you did not receive enough attention after staying in the inner hall for so long is because you are too timid? As a cultivator, if you don't even have this bit of courage, then you're dreaming if you want to achieve higher achievements. Over the next few days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others entered the oceanic world in the chaos ring to cultivate. They paid no attention to the situation outside. As time passed, this incident continued to ferment. The entire Penglai Palace was attracted by this news. On this day, Yizihua smiled as he walked into Long Yanwei's bedchamber and said with a face beaming with happiness, "Yanwei, do you know that the 4 disciples you recruited recently have been in the limelight again?" Long Yanwei was slightly stunned and said, "What trouble did they get into again? I've only been gone for a short while, and it hasn't been long. What kind of trouble have they caused?" Originally, after giving 3 demon pet eggs to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, his inventory was not much. Then, he was robbed by the palace master. His inventory was completely insufficient. It was precisely because of this that he went out to find new demon pet eggs to seal during this period of time. He did not expect that just as he returned, Yizihua would tell him such a piece of news. Why didn't you ask what exactly happened and immediately conclude that they got into trouble? Yizihua chuckled, and there was a hint of ridicule between his brows. Chapter 3660. Speak. What kind of trouble did they cause this time? As long as it's not too troublesome, it doesn't matter. Looking at Long Yanwei's disapproving look, Yizihua couldn't help but circle around the former. His eyes were filled with surprise. "Yanwei, you've really changed. In the past, you were always very annoyed by this kind of thing. Now, you're really taking too much care of these 4 little fellows. Who asked me to recruit them?" Long Yanwei's expression revealed a hint of helplessness. In the past, he had always ignored the various situations of cultivators. As for this kind of disciple who often caused trouble, he was even more disdainful. Ever since he recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, the situation had completely changed. Unknowingly, he had actually gotten used to helping them clean up the mess behind their backs. Most importantly, he actually didn't think that it was a big deal. Seeing this, Yizihua shook his head and sighed. "Yanwei, I really didn't think that you would have a day like this. Stop beating around the bush. Just tell me what happened. I only hope that this time, the palace master won't catch anything that can be used against me. Otherwise, I won't be able to withstand the palace master's robbery anymore." Thinking of the demon pet egg that was robbed by the palace master, Long Yanwei couldn't help but feel a pang of pain. Yizihua opened his folding fan and fanned himself gracefully. His eyebrows slightly raised and a slight smile appeared on his lips. This time, it wasn't the palace master who robbed you. Who knows, you might have the chance to rob the palace master. Following Yizihua's words, Long Yanwei was slightly startled. What do you mean by that? Do you know that the Bailey Hongzhuang you recruited is actually a doctor? Long Yanwei nodded. I've heard of this before. So what? That's incredible. Yizihua put away his folding fan, and his expression became serious. Right now, the entire Penglai Palace is spreading the news that Bailey Hongzhuang has made a healing medicine that is even more effective than a magic refining tower. This healing medicine has a very good restraining effect on the power of darkness. When these words came out, the surprise on Long Yanwei's face became even more intense. His movements seemed to freeze in an instant, and then he frowned and said in a deep voice, "Where did this news come from? Could it be that someone wants to frame them? Look at what you're saying. It seems like you're not very clear about the strength of the disciple that Zhao Lan brought back." Yizihua sat down across from Long Yanwei and calmly poured a cup of tea. His expression was unrestrained and leisurely. Long Yanwei snatched the teacup from Yizihua's hand and placed it in front of him. He said, "If you want to say something, then say it clearly. Are you trying to make me anxious?" Haha. Izihua laughed out loud. Only after seeing Long Yanwei's gradually darkening expression did he withdraw his joking attitude. "All right, I have already found the source of this matter. So was my disciple Ren Ziheng and the others who said it. According to what they said, this matter was indeed true. Bailey Hongzhuang had previously gone to the inner hall to train and had seen the characteristics of the dark energy. After returning, she had created this healing medicine. When they went to experience the second time, Bailey Hongzhuang gave them some healing medicine, and it was this healing medicine that saved Ren Ziheng's life." Chapter 3661. Even the 100 Flowers Gate doesn't have this kind of healing medicine. Once this news gets out, our Penglai Palace's reputation will become even more resounding. Is that true? Even though Izawa's words were reasonable, Long Yanwei still found it hard to believe because Bailey Hongzhuang was really too young. No one would have thought that this kind of healing medicine could be made by a doctor of Bailey Hongzhuang's age. It's more real than real gold. Long Yanwei frowned slightly, his eyes flashing with a thoughtful light. I've never heard them talk about this in detail before. If that's really the case, then Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills are truly astonishing. You can't judge a book by its cover. Izihua raised his eyebrows. Thinking back to when I first saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, I also didn't believe that their fighting strength would be so great. No matter what, it was a wise move for you to recruit them this time. In that case, they didn't cause me any trouble this time. On the contrary, they made me proud. A joyful smile immediately appeared on Long Yanwei's face, a hint of pride faintly appearing between his brows. Ever since he recruited the four, most people had questioned his choice and decision. Fortunately, he had never cared about what others thought and simply felt that the four were moldable talents. However, now that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had helped him fight back, he felt very gratified. Izihua nodded. Of course, this isn't just any ordinary face. Think about it. The 100 Flowers Gate hasn't been able to produce a healing medicine that can effectively restrain the power of darkness for so many years. A few days ago, the Demon Refining Tower produced it. This really shocked everyone. For the sake of that healing medicine, the Palace Master has also put in a lot of effort. Every time, he tries his best to get more of it. Now, the disciples you recruited have even more effective healing medicine. In my opinion, you can take advantage of this opportunity to blackmail the Palace Master. Haha. Hearing Izawa's words, Long Yanwei's eyes gradually brightened. If all of this is true, then I really can blackmail the Palace Master. All these years, it has always been the Temple Master who has been trying to extort things from me. This time, I have to bring back something useful. Looking at the increasingly bright and treacherous light in Long Yanwei's eyes, Izihua suddenly began to pray for the Hall Master. The Palace Master was usually a profiteer. He often took advantage of Long Yanwei, but Long Yanwei had never been able to fight back. Now that Long Yanwei finally found an opportunity, it was likely that the Palace Master would definitely bleed fiercely. By the way, has this news been completely confirmed? Long Yanwei asked. I have to find Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to understand. Don't worry. Izihua extended his folding fan to block Long Yanwei, who was about to leave. Ever since this news spread out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest cleverly went into closed-door cultivation and have yet to come out. In my opinion, it will take a few more days for them to come out. I see. Long Yanwei nodded. Then help me pay attention. If there is news of them coming out of seclusion, let me know immediately. I still have some things to do. You speak as if I have a lot of free time? You have more free time than me. Otherwise, why would you have the leisure to pay attention to the gossip in the Penglai Palace? Long Yanwei asked very naturally. Chapter 3662. Long Yanwei did not care about Izihua's refutation and directly handed the task of informing him. In this regard, Izihua sighed speechlessly and finally accepted helplessly. Beichun, we have been in seclusion for half a month. According to this situation, I'm afraid it's about time. Bailey Hongzhuang exited her cultivation state and said slowly, Di Beichen nodded. Indeed, after such a long time, I think the cultivators in the outer hall should already know. However, if you go out now, I'm afraid you will immediately be surrounded by everyone. Isn't this a situation that has long been expected? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, and her eyes were indifferent. However, I don't intend to use this time in Penglai Palace to make healing medicine, so it's better to refuse. Before this, Bailey Hongzhuang had already planned in her heart that she would only take out a portion of the healing medicine. The number of disciples in the entire inner hall was not small. It was absolutely impossible for her to support the healing medicine needed by all the inner hall disciples. In my opinion, Master Long will most likely intervene in this matter. At that time, the situation should be improved. His bright eyes flashed with confidence and certainty. If this matter had a great impact, even if he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking for him, Di Beichun would definitely not agree. However, they still had Master Long in Penglai Palace, so the situation was much simpler. Listening to Di Beichun's words, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment, and then smiled. It seems that you have thought of this long ago. You've helped Master Long gain face this time. Master Long will definitely be very happy. He will naturally think about what to do next. Everyone knows that it's impossible for you to make so many healing medicines by yourself. After understanding this point, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked out of the room. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang went into seclusion, the disciples of Penglai Palace had been paying attention to their situation. As the news of her coming out of seclusion spread, many cultivators noticed it immediately. For a time, the news also spread rapidly. She's out. Bailey Hongzhuang has finally come out of seclusion after half a month. Quickly go and tell the senior in the inner hall that Bailey Hongzhuang has come out of seclusion. You must hurry up. Jing Tianlang rushed over as soon as he heard the news that Bailey Hongzhuang had come out of seclusion. Compared to other cultivators who still had some doubts in their hearts, he completely believed it. Therefore, he had already sent someone to help pay attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's movements. Once there was any movement, he would be notified immediately, so he immediately rushed over. Junior Sister Bailey. Bailey Hongzhuang saw Jing Tianlang in front of her not long after she came out of the room. There was a slight surprise between her eyebrows. She was surprised that Jing Tianlang was so fast, but her eyes flashed with understanding. The reason why Jing Tianlang appeared at this time was obvious. Senior brother Jing. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was gentle. She didn't hate Jing Tianlang, but she didn't have a good impression of him either. Previously in the training ground, Jing Tianlang didn't care about her safety at all. That feeling was very unpleasant. Chapter 3663. Looking at the slightly cold attitude of Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him, Jing Tianlang's expression was a bit awkward, but he was mentally prepared for such a situation before he came, so he didn't find it difficult to accept at the moment. Junior Sister Bailey, I was a little rude back at the training ground. I hope you don't mind. Jing Tianlang smiled brightly, his face full of flattery. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression remained indifferent and distant. It had already been over a month since the training ground. If Jing Tianlang truly felt sorry for her, he would have apologized a long time ago. Why would he wait until now? Waiting until now to say such words to her. The sincerity of this apology was obvious without needing to think. Senior brother Jing, you're too kind. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, It's been so long. I would have forgotten about it if you didn't mention it. Jing Tianlang's expression became more and more awkward. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's words were indifferent, he could still hear the sarcasm in them. He also knew very well that if he were in Bailey Hongzhuang's shoes, he would have ignored this situation as well. I did offend you a lot last time. I hope Junior Sister Bailey can forgive me. Jing Tianlang bowed to Bailey Hongzhuang. Speaking of which, if it weren't for Junior Sister Bailey, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to make it back alive. I still owe Junior Sister Bailey a word of thanks. Bailey Hongzhuang slightly raised her right hand. Senior brother Jing, you're too kind. We were all in the same boat back then. I was only trying to save myself. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to say more about this, Jing Tianlang also knew that Bailey Hongzhuang held a grudge against this matter. It would take a long time for her to resolve it. Junior Sister Bailey, I heard from Rin Zihang and the others that you've concocted an extremely effective healing medicine. Can I shamelessly purchase some from you? Jing Tianlang tried to sound her out before hurriedly adding, no matter what the price is, Junior Marshal Sister Bailey, feel free to state it. Normally, it would be impossible for Jing Tianlang to flatter him like this, but now that he had a favor to ask, he had no other choice. Just how serious were Rin Zihang's injuries? It was because of this healing medicine that Rin Zihang was able to preserve his life. Although he would lose some face now, it was nothing compared to his life. Seeing that Jing Tianlang was talking about the main point, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen beside her. Di Beichen's lips curved slightly. Brother Jing, we also know that everyone must want to buy this healing medicine now. Hongzhuang has indeed made some. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Jing Tianlang's eyes lit up. He was most worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would refuse to sell the healing medicine. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was willing to sell it, he would have nothing to worry about. However, Di Beichen's next words stunned Jing Tianlang. Although Hongzhuang is a physician, she still prioritizes cultivation. Therefore, the healing medicine that she has concocted is definitely not enough for all of you. Junior Marshal Brother D, what do you mean? Jing Tianlang immediately asked. Just as Di Beichen and Jing Tianlang were conversing, the other inner palace disciples hurried over. Bailey Hongzhuang had finally come out of closed-door cultivation, so they had to find a way to obtain as much healing medicine as possible. Junior Marshal Sister Bailey, I wonder if you can sell me some healing medicine? The price is negotiable. Chapter 3664. In an instant, the crowd surrounded Bailey Hongzhuang and began to bid. They were afraid that the healing medicine would be snatched away by other cultivators if they were late. Junior Sister Bailey, I can give you something in exchange. Junior Sister Bailey, Junior Sister Bailey. Everyone was thinking about Bailey Hongzhuang's name. In just a short time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were surrounded by a group of inner palace disciples. The outer palace disciples who were watching the scene were completely dumbfounded. Every one of them had their mouths agape and were tongue-tied. Even though they had expected Bailey Hongzhuang to be extremely lively when she appeared, the scene in front of them had still exceeded their expectations. What the hell? Does it have to be so exaggerated? Even if Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine is very effective, it can't be compared to refining pills. Why are the inner palace senior brothers and senior sisters going crazy as if they have seen a delicious cake? I don't understand either. But judging from a situation, whoever dares to cause trouble for Bailey Hongzhuang in the future will be asking for trouble. Compared to the passion in the hearts of the inner palace disciples, the outer palace disciples were extremely confused. There were many healing medicines in this world, and there were even more effective healing pills. Since these inner palace disciples were willing to pay a high price, why would they be so obsessed with Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine? They could just go and buy healing pills. Jing Tianlang, who was originally negotiating with Bailey Hongzhuang, was almost squeezed out by the crowd in a short time. When he saw the inner palace disciples appearing one after another around him, the shock in his eyes deepened. Among the crowd, there was no lack of cultivators on the inner palace ranking list. Normally, it was very difficult to talk to them. Now that they had come out to buy healing medicine, it was easy to imagine the impact this situation had on Jing Tianlang's heart. The wide road was already packed with people. Di Beichen extended his hand to protect Bailey Hongzhuang from being squeezed by the crowd. Everyone, please be quiet. Di Beichen's deep and magnetic voice sounded from the center of the crowd when he saw that the situation was getting more and more intense. The originally noisy environment immediately quieted down when Di Beichen's voice sounded. Everyone knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's relationship was not ordinary. Di Beichen's words represented Bailey Hongzhuang. After the crowd quieted down, Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and gave her the right to speak. I'm Bailey Hongzhuang. Thank you, senior brothers and senior sisters, for your love. I know that everyone has a certain need for healing medicine, so I've made quite a lot of healing medicine over the past few days. However, Compared to the amount that you have, I'm afraid that the amount is still not enough. Everyone's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. When they heard that Bailey Hongzhuang had indeed made healing medicine, they could not help but feel happy. As long as they had healing medicine, they would have a chance. However, when they heard that the amount of healing medicine was not enough, everyone's feelings became somewhat complicated. They could not help but look at the cultivators beside them, wondering if they could break through the encirclement of so many inner palace disciples. Therefore, under such circumstances, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was speaking, Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua slowly walked over. Chapter 36-65. Long Yanwei was naturally worried that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would cause trouble again after being surrounded by the crowd. He was very clear about the significance of this healing medicine to the inner palace cultivators. If they were to fight over it, Bailey Hongzhuang would suffer for no reason. When Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua arrived, they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zihua were surrounded by a sea of people. Yi Zihua could not help but sigh. Yanwei, it's rare to see such a lively scene in Penglai Palace. However, ever since you recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, this situation has often happened. Yi Zihua was not lying about this. In Penglai Palace, other than the appearance of the palace master, it would attract a crowd of disciples to surround him. Such a situation rarely happened on normal days. The most important thing was that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had only been in the Penglai Palace for a short period of time. Apart from the time they went out to gain experience, it seemed that every time they appeared in this outer hall, they would cause such a scene. Come to think of it, this was also an amazing ability. Long Yanwei frowned slightly. Just as he was about to refute, he realized that what Yi Zihua said seemed to be true. Lord Long is here. Lord Long and Instructor Yi are here. Soon, the crowd noticed the appearance of Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua. Immediately, the crowd restrained themselves. Greetings, Lord Long and Instructor Yi. Long Yanwei nodded slightly, and then slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Today, the outer hall is really lively. Hearing Long Yanwei's emotionless words, the cultivators present could not help but lower their heads. They secretly cursed the reason for Long Yanwei's appearance here. I told you, Lord Long is protecting Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang has come out of seclusion, Lord Long will definitely come. I wasn't willing to believe it before, but now I have no choice but to believe it. However, everyone is just asking for medicine and did not do anything excessive. It shouldn't be a big deal, right? I'm not sure. Let's see what Lord Long has to say. Everyone looked at each other, and they were unable to figure out exactly what Long Yanwei intended to do. Seeing the appearance of Long Yanwei, the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bei Chun both showed a smile and saluted Long Darren. Mentor E. He's out of seclusion? Long Yanwei's face rippled with a cordial smile. He carefully sized up Di Bei Chun and said, "You've broken through?" Di Bei Chun cupped his hands and nodded. "I broke through not long ago." "Not bad." Long Yanwei's eyes flashed with a hint of satisfaction. With Di Bei Chun's age, he was able to break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm. This speed could be said to be fast enough. As soon as I came back, I heard that you've developed a new type of healing medicine that's extremely effective. That's why I came over with Instructor E to take a look. Long Yanwei retracted his gaze and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang again. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. She said, "Lord Long, I was just about to hand this matter over to you." "What do you mean?" Long Yanwei was slightly stunned, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. "Since I was recruited by Lord Long, I've always thought of Lord Long as my instructor." Chapter 36-66. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes quietly reflected a touch of slyness. Her red lips parted slightly as she quietly exchanged glances with Di Bei Chun. Both of them understood each other tacitly. They had already thought about this beforehand. Firstly, although Bailey Hongzhuang could concoct the healing medicine, it was impossible for her to spend all her time concocting the healing medicine. As a result, there would definitely be people who had it and people who didn't. She didn't have much interaction with the majority of the disciples in the inner palace. There was no need for her to offend some of the disciples because of this. If Master Long were to step in, then the situation would be much simpler. After all, Master Long's prestige was there. As long as Master Long spoke, no one would have any objections. Secondly, if Bailey Hongzhuang gave the right to distribute the healing medicine to Long Yanwei, it would undoubtedly help to raise Long Yanwei's status. This was because the healing medicine was too useful to the disciples of the inner palace. Not only that, the secret of the healing medicine couldn't be concealed. It wouldn't take long for other forces to find out. When everyone knew that the healing medicine was controlled by Long Yanwei, there was no need to talk about Long Yanwei's influence. This could be deduced from the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang sold a prescription to the Magic Training Tower that made the Magic Training Tower famous. Ever since they came to the Penglai Palace, Long Yanwei had been helping them. In comparison, other than causing some trouble, they really couldn't repay Long Yanwei with anything. Now, they could take advantage of this opportunity to return the favor. At least, they could express some of their feelings. When everyone heard Bailey Hongzhuang's decision, they couldn't help but be stunned. If they were to obtain the healing medicine from Bailey Hongzhuang, they still had many ways. However, if they were to obtain the healing medicine from Master Long, they had to follow the rules set by Master Long. Long Yanwei never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would make such a decision. A trace of astonishment immediately surfaced in his calm eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang did not give Long Yanwei too much time to think. She immediately handed a chinquin pouch to Long Yanwei and said, "Master Long, all the medicine I've made during this period of time is here. I'll leave it to you to decide how to distribute it." After receiving the healing medicine from Bailey Hongzhuang, Long Yanwei finally reacted. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun with a complicated expression. However, he only saw the sincere smiles on their faces. Long Yanwei was not a stupid person. After thinking about it for a moment, he already understood the reason why they did this. He could not help but sigh in his heart. However, in the current situation, it was clearly not suitable for him to say anything more to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Instead, he looked at the other disciples of the inner hall who were waiting. Since Bailey Hongzhuang has given the right to distribute the medicine to me, in my opinion, the first batch of healing medicine should be auctioned off for the time being. As for how this problem should be handled in the future, the hall master and I will make a decision after discussing it carefully. Bailey Hongzhuang's decision caught Long Yanwei off guard. For the time being, auctioning was the most suitable method. As for how the medicine would be distributed in the future, it was clearly impossible to always rely on auctioning. They had to think of the most suitable method. Chapter 36-67. Bailey Hongzhuang, what do you think of my decision? Long Yanwei asked aloud. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips bloomed into a bright smile. Master Long, I naturally have no objections to your decision. Di Beichun also nodded. Long Yanwei's decision was not beyond their expectations. In fact, when they were first thinking about how to distribute the healing medicine, they also thought of the auction method. After all, this method was the fairest. No matter what the final result was, no one could find any fault with it. That's good. The smile on Long Yanwei's face widened a little, and his voice became a lot lighter. After Long Yanwei made the final decision, everyone immediately stopped pestering Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that Long Yanwei had made his move, it was meaningless for them to continue pestering him. It was better to go back and think about how to buy the healing medicine through the auction. However, just as everyone was about to leave, Long Yanwei reminded everyone that the auction was not using spirit stones, but Penglai Palace's points. This was also the consideration of Long Yanwei, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the other three. In the outside world, the role of spirit stones was naturally huge, but after coming to Penglai Palace, it was obvious that the role of points was greater than spirit stones. Here, points could be exchanged for spirit stones, but spirit stones could not be exchanged for points. With points, they could go to the resource room to exchange for the cultivation resources they needed, which was far more convenient than points. Not only that, Using points to bid was also fair for the disciples of the inner palace. After all, points were obtained by hunting skeletons. After everyone dispersed, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen followed Long Yanwei to his bedroom. I haven't seen you for a while. I didn't expect you to give me such a huge surprise. Long Yanwei smiled as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen in front of him. I didn't know that your medical skills were so outstanding. When I found out about it, I just thought that someone had spread it wrongly. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Previously, I saw the power of darkness for the first time in the training ground. After that, I studied it carefully and concocted this healing medicine. Originally, I didn't intend to make it public and just gave it to Senior Brother Run and the others. However, I didn't expect this matter to spread so widely that it finally evolved into what it is today. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke casually, but Long Yanwei and Yi Hua were stunned after hearing this. It had only been 1 or 2 months since Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 mistakenly entered the training ground of the inner palace. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang said that she studied it, how could she have studied it in such a short period of time? If the 100 Flowers Gates people heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, wouldn't they spit out a mouthful of blood? But Bailey Hongzhuang said it as if it was a matter of course, without the slightest bit of falsehood, which made the contrast even bigger. I see. The corner of Long Yanwei's lips twitched. After this incident, he suddenly realized that he didn't have a good enough understanding of the disciples he had recruited. It was obvious that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were not ordinary. Since you've handed this matter to me, I will handle it properly and obtain the greatest benefits for you. Long Yanwei's eyes were filled with a serious light. However, this kind of news will definitely not be able to be hidden from the palace master. It's good for you to hand over the authority to handle this matter to me. It will be better for you if I negotiate with the palace master. Chapter 3668. Since they were now disciples of Peng Lai Palace, their actions naturally had an inseparable relationship with Peng Lai Palace. Peng Lai Palace was different from the Magic Tower. The cultivators of the Magic Tower could leave at any time and anywhere. They were only staying there temporarily. The Magic Tower did not have the right to ask them to do anything. Entering Peng Lai Palace was like joining a system. They could obtain cultivation resources from here. At the same time, they also needed to fulfill certain obligations. From the moment Bailey Hongzhuang decided to spread the news, they had already expected that this matter would definitely reach the ears of the palace master. However, after the previous incident, they also had a certain favorable impression of the palace master. Therefore, they did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. At present, I still don't know how effective this healing medicine is in restraining the power of darkness. After we figure it out, we will be able to give you an accurate answer. If the effect is really excellent, then it is an extremely precious resource for the entire Peng Lai inner palace. Naturally, your contributions cannot go unnoticed. Long Yanwei's eyes were filled with a faint luster of appreciation. Although he had not yet understood the true effect of the healing medicine, he had already determined in his heart that the effect would definitely not be bad. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang had really made a great contribution this time. Originally, the palace master found it difficult to understand his generous decision this time. However, he believed that after the palace master knew about this matter, his thoughts would completely change. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands. Thank you, Master Long. She originally made this healing medicine because they would go to the inner palace to train in the future. The earlier they developed the healing medicine, the better it would be for them in the future. On the other hand, she hoped that Rin Ziheng and the others would be safe. Speaking of which, the disciples of the inner palace dealt with the skeleton army to protect the entire Shengxian continent. If she could do something for them, it would be reasonable. Now that you have left this matter to me to handle, presumably the other disciples will not disturb you due to my identity. You can cultivate in peace. If there is any problem, if someone disturbs you or wants to use other means to seize the healing medicine, you can tell me. Long Yanwei narrowed his eyes. As he spoke, a hint of coldness appeared between his brows. In this Peng Lai palace, there was no lack of daring people. Maybe someone would want to use some tough means to take the prescription from Bailey Hongzhuang. Although he could deter most of the practitioners, he could not guarantee that all the practitioners would not have such thoughts. After all, the medicinal formula of this kind of healing medicine was a shocking profit. As long as he mastered this recipe, he could rely on it to live a carefree life in the future. Thank you for your concern, Master Long. We will be more careful, Di Baichen replied. He had also thought of this, but they were still confident that they could deal with other cultivators. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen left, Yizihua looked at Long Yanwei with a faint smile on his handsome face. Yanwei, you really did not recruit the wrong two disciples. Previously, I only thought that they would often cause trouble for you. However, from their actions today, it seems that they still value you very much. Yizihua was also a smart person. Naturally, he could see the purpose of Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. This was to increase Long Yanwei's status and influence. Chapter 36-69. Hearing Yizihua's words, the smile in Long Yanwei's eyes couldn't help but soften a little. I also didn't expect that they would give me such a big surprise. It's really unexpected, but just as you said, I also feel that my eyesight is not bad. Seeing that Long Yanwei was so happy from the bottom of his heart, Yizihua was also a little surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang gave you the right to distribute this healing medicine. It is indeed quite beneficial for you, but it's not like you haven't had such an opportunity before, and I've never seen you so happy. You don't understand. Long Yanwei waved his hand. What I value the most is not this benefit, but this intention. Yizihua raised his eyebrows. Intention? Thinking back to when I recruited them back then, I was cheated of 3 demon pet eggs. This kind of sacrifice is already not small. Sometimes, even I don't understand why I would do this. However, just now I thought it through. Perhaps it was because I took a fancy to their grateful nature that I was willing to do this. Long Yanwei's face lit up with joy. He had never thought of obtaining any repayment from Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. However, the actions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had given him a warm feeling. He had stayed on Penglai Island for so many years and had long seen through the fickleness of human nature. Almost everyone only valued their own interests, and it was precisely because of this that he usually stayed in his own palace and was unwilling to communicate with others. When he first met Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, on one hand, he admired the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, and, on the other hand, he also admired the sincere feelings that the 4 of them revealed. And now, when Di Baichen and the others also used this kind of feelings to treat him, only then did he understand the reason why he took such care of them before. Yizihua originally did not understand. With Long Yanwei's status on Penglai Island, he could get whatever he wanted. However, it had been a long time since he saw Long Yanwei's happy expression from the bottom of his heart. It was only after hearing Long Yanwei's words that he finally understood. Thinking about it carefully, everything was as Long Yanwei had said. Affection was the most precious thing. Looks like you've recruited 4 good disciples. Yizihua smiled faintly. Then I have to congratulate you. Long Yanwei smiled. Your disciple is also not bad. As the news of the upcoming auction for the healing medicine spread out, all the cultivators in the inner palace began to actively prepare for it. Even if they lost these points, they could still earn them back in the future. After obtaining the healing medicine, they would have more assurance when they went to the training grounds. For a time, many cultivators tried to use spirit stones or other things to exchange for points. However, most of the other cultivators had the same idea, so it was not very useful. Some of the cultivators who had just used their points to exchange for cultivation resources could be said to be extremely depressed. One by one, they beat their chests and stamped their feet in regret. If they had known this would happen, they would not have exchanged for cultivation resources in the first place. Now, they could only watch helplessly as everyone bid. Penglai Palace's palace master gradually got wind of this news and immediately rushed to Long Yanwei's palace. Yanwei. Palace Master Bai Tsangmin smiled brightly as he walked towards Long Yanwei. Greetings, Hall Master. Long Yanwei cupped his hands, but his attitude was somewhat cold. Chapter 3670. Bai Tsangmin originally planned to not appear in front of Long Yanwei for a period of time and wait for Long Yanwei's anger to subside. Now that he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang actually made a healing medicine that could effectively restrain the power of darkness, the latter just had to give the right to dispose of the medicine to Long Yanwei. As a result, it was impossible for him to hide for a while. At this moment, he could only brace himself and look for Long Yanwei. Although he was the palace master of Penglai Palace, Long Yanwei, as the highest-ranked contract master in the entire Penglai Island, had always been a popular figure. If Long Yanwei wanted to leave Penglai Palace, he could choose any other forces. Fortunately, the two of them were extremely good friends in private. Long Yanwei was already used to being robbed by him over the years. However, he was a little too ruthless this time, so Long Yanwei was a little unhappy. Bai Zhangming gave Yizihua, who was beside Long Yanwei, a look. Yizihua helplessly spread out his hands. Even he felt that Bai Zhangming was a little too ruthless previously. Now, there was nothing he could do. Seeing Yizihua's neutral appearance, Bai Zhangming felt even more helpless in his heart. The smile on his face also revealed a hint of flattery. Yanwei, no matter what, we've been friends for so many years. Don't be angry about what happened last time. Long Yanwei's expression was indifferent. How would I dare to be angry at the palace master? Look, you're obviously angry. Bai Zhangming sat down opposite Long Yanwei. Didn't I do that last time because you gave the 4 rookies such good treatment for the first time? I took the opportunity to take advantage of you. If you're unhappy, you'll return the demon pet egg to me. Long Yanwei asked. Bai Zhangming smiled brilliantly. That's impossible. If that's the case, then what's the point of talking about it? That's not how it is. Bai Zhangming waved his hand. I won't return this demon pet egg to you. However, if you want anything else, as long as it's possible, I'll agree to it. Hearing that, Long Yanwei rolled his eyes. I'm not interested in those things of yours. Bai Zhangming's face froze. Yanwei, aren't you really not giving me any face? Could it be that there isn't anything that you're interested in from a hall master like me? Long Yanwei glanced at Bai Zhangming and did not say anything. Bai Zhangming, on the other hand, gradually felt guilty. Speaking of which, with Long Yanwei's ability, it seemed that there really wasn't anything that he couldn't get. On the contrary, he really needed the demon pet egg for the Penglai Palace's disciples. All right, you win. Bai Zhangyin shrugged. A wisp of a smile gradually appeared in the depths of Long Yanwei's eyes when he saw Bai Zhangming's appearance. He and Bai Zhangming had known each other for many years, and their friendship was extremely deep. It was precisely because of this that Bai Zhangming could rob him without any scruples. Speaking of which, he didn't take this anger to heart. It was just that he was used to being stingy on demon pet eggs, and it was just for fun. Now that he looked at Bai Zhangming's helpless appearance, he felt that it was very interesting. There was probably no one else other than Bai Zhangming who could do this for a hall master. Yizihua could not help but chuckle. Bai Zhangming only acted like this in front of his friends of many years. If anyone else saw the dignified Penglai Palace master acting like this, they would definitely be dumbfounded. Chapter 3671. Bai Zhangming's eyes lit up when he heard Long Yanwei's words. What do you need? Originally, Bai Zhangming was worried that Long Yanwei would take advantage of this opportunity to rob him. However, after experiencing the earlier scene, he was looking forward to having something that Long Yanwei needed. Don't you have a few fiery fruits? Give them to me. Fiery fruits? Bai Zhangming raised his eyebrows. This fiery fruit has the effect of purifying a cultivator's yuan power. However, with your current cultivation, this fiery fruit is of no use to you. What do you need it for? The flaming fruit was a great treasure for cultivators who were at a lower realm. Not only could it purify the origin energy, but it could also allow the cultivator to break through. Normally, the disciples would fight to obtain the flaming fruit. However, this fiery fruit was extremely rare. Even if it appeared in an auction, it would be snatched away in an instant. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary cultivator to obtain it. Yizihua quickly understood. Yanwei, you intend to give this fiery fruit to those 4 little fellows? Long Yanwei smiled faintly and nodded his head, With their current cultivation, consuming this fire fruit is the most appropriate choice. Since they have given me such a great gift this time, I naturally cannot treat them unfairly. Looking at Long Yanwei's protective appearance, the surprise in Yizihua's eyes was even stronger. It seemed that after the actions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Long Yanwei had completely regarded them as his own people. Although Long Yanwei had protected them previously, it was not to such an extent. However, Long Yanwei was now thinking for them from the bottom of his heart. Bai Cangming also understood at this moment. So it's those four little fellows. Bailey Hongzhuang has done such a great service this time. It's only right to give them some rewards. You're wrong. Long Yanwei waved his hand. This fiery fruit is my reward for them. Palace Master, you have to think about what rewards you should give them. Don't mix it up with my things. Bai Cangming was stunned. He stared at Long Yanwei in shock. You're becoming more and more shrewd. I can't help it. Those who are close to ink will be affected. Long Yanwei looked at Bai Cangming calmly. Obviously, the ink he was referring to was Bai Cangming. Cough, cough. Bai Cangming coughed dryly. Forget it. Since you put it this way, I'll seem petty if I don't take out something of value. After so many years, you've only taken a fancy to these four disciples. It's only right that you treat them well. Then it's settled. The smile on Long Yanwei's lips widened. Hall Master, you can now tell me the reason why you're here. Bai Cangming finally reacted when he heard Long Yanwei's words. I was so focused on telling you about the previous matter that I almost forgot about this important matter. I heard that Bailey Hongzhuang gave you all the medicine she made. That's right. They're all with me. Then have you studied the effects of this healing medicine on dark energy? Bai Cangming's joking expression was replaced by a serious one. This was a huge matter for the Penglai Palace. If the effect was excellent, the death rate of the inner palace disciples would be greatly reduced. Chapter 3672. How's the effect? Bai Cangming couldn't help but ask. It's just as everyone has heard. The effect is extremely good, Long Yanwei replied. He and Yizihua couldn't help but be shocked when they saw the outstanding effect. They had already heard that the effect was extremely good, but they still couldn't help but be astonished when they saw it with their own eyes. Because the effect was even better than they had imagined. Bai Cangming's eyes lit up, and he continued to ask, It's even better than the healing medicine from the demonic training tower? That's right, the effect is even better. Yizihua came over as well. The effect is more than twice as good as the healing medicine from the demonic training tower. The dark energy has already been weakened by more than half. Although there are still some slight effects, they aren't too big. That's great. Bai Cangming was overjoyed. He clapped his hands as a joyful smile covered his face. I never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually be able to concoct such a healing medicine. She's truly amazing. Yanwei, it seems that I was wrong to have doubted your foresight. Now it seems that your foresight is truly extraordinary. Because he was too happy, Bai Cangming didn't mind belittling himself. Compared to a little face, he valued the inner palace disciples more. Over the years, the casualty rate of the inner palace disciples had always been their greatest worry. They couldn't bear to see their disciples lose their lives after achieving so much with great difficulty. Unfortunately, they hadn't been able to find an effective healing medicine to deal with the dark energy after such a long time. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually be able to accomplish this. It was truly a pleasant surprise. Of course, Long Yanwei was slightly pleased. During this period of time, everyone felt that his actions were too abnormal, and he was slightly unhappy. Now that he could finally hold his head high, he was in a good mood. Hall Master, since you're here, I'm sure you've already heard that I'm going to auction this healing medicine, right? Long Yanwei asked. Bai Cangming nodded. I've heard. You've made the right decision, but I feel that we should change the method in the future. I had the same plan, but Bailey Hongzhuang spoke of this matter so suddenly that I could only think of this method in a short period of time. I understand. Bai Cangming's eyes were filled with understanding. Under the circumstances from before, Long Yanwei's idea of holding an auction was undoubtedly the best method. Hall Master, have you thought of a way to deal with it? Yizihua couldn't help but ask. Bai Cangming nodded, and the smile on the corners of his mouth widened. That's right. I've decided to exchange this healing medicine for points in the future. This way, it'll be very fair, and it'll also be able to promote everyone's training. Hearing this, Long Yanwei and Yi Hua looked at each other. This was indeed an excellent idea. Most importantly, in this way, Bailey Hongzhuang would undoubtedly have the palace master as her backer. If Long Yanwei's reputation was not great enough, then with the palace master's backing, most people would not dare to plot against her. Although I have made such a decision, it still depends on whether Bailey Hongzhuang is willing or not. Bai Caoming spoke slowly. Yanwei, do you think the possibility of making Bailey Hongzhuang hand over the prescription is high? Chapter 3673. Under such circumstances, it would be best for the entire Penglai Palace if Bailey Hongzhuang was willing to hand over the prescription. Similarly, once Bailey Hongzhuang agreed, Bailey Hongzhuang's contribution to the Penglai Palace would be extraordinarily great. This was because not only would it reduce the casualty rate of inner palace disciples, it would also increase the Penglai Palace's influence. Although the Penglai Palace was already one of the three great forces, everyone knew that the Penglai Palace was definitely the top existence. Once the Penglai Palace released this healing medicine, the Penglai Palace's status would definitely rise again. Both the Hundred Flowers sect and the Crimson Moon sect would definitely be amazed. Long Yanwei could not help but ponder when he heard Bai Caoming's words. His tone was somewhat uncertain. I can't make a judgment on this matter. I can only know after asking Bailey Hongzhuang's opinion. This kind of prescription was an extremely precious treasure to the cultivators of the Penglai Palace who came into contact with the power of darkness. Most cultivators would probably not be willing to take it out. After all, as long as this resource was in their hands, they could exchange it for many precious treasures. Izihua also spread his hands. Actually, I don't think that most people would agree. Bai Caoming's expression became somewhat complicated when he heard that. He also understood that this matter was related to personal interests. If Bailey Hongzhuang was willing, as long as there was something on the Penglai Island, she would be able to exchange it for the prescription no matter what it was. If he handed over the prescription at this moment, it would only be a short-term benefit. On the contrary, if he held the prescription in his hands, Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to obtain an endless supply of resources. Yanwei, see if you can help with this matter. This is too important to the development of the Penglai Palace and the entire Penglai Island. Bai Caoming looked at Long Yanwei. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had this kind of prescription, she would definitely be a highly sought-after existence, no matter which force she went to. Even if he used his identity as the palace master to pressure Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be meaningless. He still needed Bailey Hongzhuang to voluntarily hand over the prescription. After thinking about it, the only possibility was Long Yanwei. Hall Master, don't place high hopes on me. Long Yanwei hurriedly waved his hand with a helpless expression. Although I've recruited Bailey Hongzhuang, I don't have the qualifications to make her give up such a huge benefit. Bai Caoming nodded. Understand. I don't intend to force Bailey Hongzhuang to hand over the prescription. I just want you to help me ask around and try your best. Long Yanwei's eyes flickered with a complicated light. He originally thought that it was already very difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang to give him the method to process this healing medicine. He never thought that the palace master would actually want this pill formula. As a result, he was undoubtedly in an awkward position. Yanwei, every time we see an inner palace disciple die, both you and I feel terrible. Now that we finally have such an opportunity, we have to work hard. Bai Caoming sighed. He naturally understood that Long Yanwei's situation was a little awkward, but there was no other way. Chapter 3674. Long Yanwei furrowed his brows tightly. After his deep gaze swept across Izihua and Bai Caoming, he finally sighed helplessly and said, I will try my best. Thank you, Yanwei. A trace of seriousness surfaced on Bai Caoming's face, and he was no longer joking. It was already very difficult for Long Yanwei to agree to help him ask about this matter. With Long Yanwei's usual temperament, he had never interfered with such matters. I am only going to ask. As for what decision Bailey Hongzhuang will make in the end, I have no control over it, said Long Yanwei. I understand. If Bailey Hongzhuang is unwilling, I will not force her, replied Bai Tsangming. If it were any other disciple of Penglai Palace, he might really use some coercive methods. After all, he was the palace master. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was recruited by Long Yanwei, so he could not do that. Hearing Bai Tsangming's words, Long Yanwei's eyes were filled with smiles. After Bailey Hongzhuang returned to her residence, she discovered that although there were still many cultivators paying attention to them, no one dared to disturb them. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. Beichun, it seems that the idea we came up with is indeed very good. It saves us a lot of trouble. Di Beichun pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's soft and boneless hand over. Taking advantage of the situation, the latter sat on his lap and fell into his embrace. Master Long has an extremely high position in Penglai Palace. With his appearance, ordinary cultivators will naturally not dare to disturb us. Di Beichun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face while his right hand played with her little hand. What we should think about now should be the palace master and Master Long's final decision on how to distribute this healing medicine in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang hooked her arm around Di Beichun's neck, and her beautiful lips curled up slightly. What do you think the hall master will decide? Di Beichun thought for a moment and said, if I were the palace master, I would want to make this healing medicine a resource that everyone in the Penglai Palace can exchange for. Therefore, using points to exchange for it is undoubtedly the most appropriate. Exchange points? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her amber eyes flashed with a thoughtful light, and then she understood. This is indeed an excellent method, as expected of the young sect master of Tiangang's sect. Every time, he can think of the best way to deal with it from the perspective of the sect. Wife, are you praising your husband? Di Beichun gazed at Bailey Hongzhuang with his deep eyes. His voice was gentle and intoxicating. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Of course. Wife praises your husband so much. Your husband is overjoyed. I can only use one way to thank you for your praise. Di Beichun's lips suddenly curled up, but his eyes gradually deepened. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. What way? In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that the world was spinning. In the blink of an eye, she was pressed under Di Beichun's body. A pair of dishonest hands had begun to grope her. Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face blushed. We haven't finished talking about the healing medicine, no hurry. But it won't be long before the hall master and the others should come to us. We have to think of a countermeasure. Di Beichun's fingertips gently pressed on Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips, blocking her words. Wife, the most important thing now is to get down to business. Other things can be discussed later. Chapter 3675. Knock, knock, knock. Everything was just as Bailey Hongzhuang had expected. Someone knocked on the door outside the house. Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked, and her face turned even redder. Beichun, outside. Di Beichun waved his hand, and his elemental energy immediately surrounded the room, completely isolating the sound from the outside. You. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Her hands were pressed against Di Beichun's warm chest, and her face was filled with helplessness. It could be Palace Master or Lord Long outside. It's fine. They won't be so tactless. Di Beichun's lips curled, and his smile became even more devilish. But Di Beichun planted a deep kiss on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. Wife, focus. Long Yanwei and Yizihua knocked on the door for a while, but there was no response. The two of them looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. What was going on? Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang and Yizihua had already predicted that they would come here, so they closed the door and refused to see them? Seeing this, Ziren couldn't help but walk over. Greetings, Lord Long, teacher. When Ziren, do you know why Bailey Hongzhuang and Yizihua didn't open the door? Long Yanwei asked. Didn't open the door? Ziren frowned. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. He quickly reacted and swallowed the words in his mouth. Although his heart was still filled with doubts, he naturally made up a lie. Hongzhuang previously told me that she felt that the seniors in the inner palace had a huge demand for this healing medicine, so she wanted to make more. In order to prevent others from disturbing them, They might have used their elemental energy to isolate the sound from the outside. After hearing Xiren's explanation, Long Yanwei and Yi Hua finally understood, and they felt even more gratified in their hearts. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually think so much for her senior brothers and sisters in the Inner Palace. Master Long, why don't you go back first? When Hongzhuang and the others come out, I'll tell them to go to your palace. How about that? Long Yanwei nodded. All right, tell them that I have something to discuss with them. Wen Xiren heaved a sigh of relief after Long Yanwei and the other man had left. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other man's tightly shut door and felt extremely puzzled. What are Bei Chen and the others busy with right now? Logically speaking, he shouldn't have suddenly gone into seclusion. Shangwan Yingying heard the commotion outside and walked over. Maybe they're busy with something. Why don't we ask them when they come out? When Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Bei Chen opened the door, Long Yanwei and the others had already left. Bailey Hongzhuang glared angrily at Di Beichun, but when her expression fell into Di Beichun's eyes, it became extremely flirtatious. Wife, if you continue to look at your husband like that, your husband might not be able to control himself. Di Beichun smiled wickedly. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned and guiltily withdrew her gaze. This guy had always been powerful, but he was also so powerful in this aspect. She had always been willing to admit defeat. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other man's movements. At this moment, when they heard the commotion, they immediately rushed over. Beichun, Master Long, and Teacher, he came looking for you just now, but what were you two busy with? Why didn't you open the door? Chapter 3676. Looking at Di Beichun's matter-of-fact and unguilty look, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a burst of admiration in her heart. If she didn't know what was going on, she would have believed Di Beichun's righteous look at this moment. Di Beichun glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang from the corner of his eyes, as if to ask, I'm not telling the truth? Bailey Hongzhuang laughed in her heart. Back then, who knows how many people were deceived by Di Beichun's expression. This guy was actually a bad person. Master Long and the others must have come looking for you because of the healing medicine. I think you should hurry up and take a look. When Xiren said, Di Beichun nodded, Hongzhuang and I will go over now. Do you want to go together? We won't go. Xiren waved his hand. This healing medicine was made by Hongzhuang. It would be inconvenient for us to go together. In this matter, they had no intention of taking advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, it was not easy for Bailey Hongzhuang to develop this healing medicine. They had already benefited a lot from it. It would be inappropriate for them to go together now. Di Beichun also understood Xiren's thoughts and immediately said, Then Hongzhuang and I will go and take a look first. Go quickly. Shangwan Yingying smiled. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun arrived at the bedroom, Long Yanwei and Yi Hua were obviously waiting for them. Greetings, Master Long and Teacher Yi. The two bowed respectfully. Long Yanwei waved his hand. I called you here today to discuss something with you. Please speak. Master Long, the Palace Master already knows about this healing medicine. According to the Palace Master's idea, the best way to deal with this healing medicine in the future is to choose to exchange points. This is the fairest and most convenient way. Long Yanwei said slowly, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Hua, paying attention to the changes in their expressions. Hearing this answer, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun remained calm, but in their hearts, they already knew that the situation was exactly the same as Di Beichun thought. If this healing medicine is to be exchanged with points, then the quantity of this healing medicine must be increased. Bailey Hongzhuang alone may not be enough to make it. Therefore, the Palace Master hopes that you can hand over the prescription of this healing medicine. As a condition of exchange, you can ask for any heavenly treasure you want, as long as the Penglai Palace has it. At the same time, if this healing medicine is sold in the future, 20% of the profit will be yours. Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression and said the conditions they had agreed on. Master Long has tried his best to fight for the best conditions for you. Izahua followed up and said, 20%, this profit is very considerable. Similarly, If you agree, then you can directly become an inner hall disciple because of your great contribution and enjoy the treatment of an inner hall disciple. If it was an ordinary disciple, it was absolutely impossible to have such treatment. It was only because of the relationship between Long Yanwei and Bailey Hongzhuang and others that the palace master offered such good conditions. Chapter 3677. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. They had already guessed that the Penglai Palace wanted to obtain the prescription. In fact, when Bailey Hongzhuang had decided to announce this news, she had already expected this to happen. Therefore, she did not find it strange at all. Long Yanwei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had fallen into silence and could not help but say, "If you're unwilling, there's no need to be conflicted. You could tell me directly. You were the ones who had researched this prescription. Naturally, you have the right to decide." Long Yanwei did not find this strange at all. In fact, if it had been anyone else, they would not have been willing to hand it over. Izihua frowned. In fact, the palace master's offer was already very good. No matter how much healing medicine was sold in the future, 20% of it would belong to Bailey Hongzhuang. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to get a lot of benefits without having to worry about anything. In comparison, this was undoubtedly much more convenient. Unfortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang was still unwilling. If the palace master were to find out about this result, he would definitely be very disappointed. However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said, "All right, I agree." Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Long Yanwei and Izihua could not help but be stunned. They stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment and wondered if they had heard wrongly. "You said, you agree?" Long Yanwei asked with uncertainty. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her delicate head gently. Her voice was serious and steady as she said, "That's right, I agree." Seeing this, Long Yanwei and Izihua could not help but look at each other. In fact, when Bailey Hongzhuang had refused previously, they were not surprised. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly agreed, they found it hard to believe. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun naturally noticed the astonishment on Long Yanwei's and Di Beichun's faces. They couldn't help but feel a little amused. It was rare to see such an expression on the other party's face. It seemed that their decision had greatly exceeded Long Yanwei's and Di Beichun's expectations. "Are you really willing?" Long Yanwei asked again. "Don't do something against your will because of the hall master's pressure or my existence. We all know how precious this prescription is." If he had been rejected, Long Yanwei would not have felt anything. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had agreed, he felt a burst of pressure. If Bailey Hongzhuang had made such a decision because of him, then he would have let Bailey Hongzhuang down. Seeing the worry in Long Yanwei's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood the former's thoughts. She was faintly touched in her heart. She never thought that Long Yanwei would actually be so considerate of him. Although they had never been well-liked in Penglai Palace, it was already a great blessing to be able to receive Long Yanwei's sincere treatment. "Master Long, you don't have to worry about us. We're willing to do this." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, "Although this prescription is precious, as a member of Penglai Palace, I will naturally not refuse if I can do something." Hearing this, Long Yanwei and Izihua still did not understand. These words were dignified, but they did not conform to the inner feelings of ordinary people. Chapter 3678. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a bright and resplendent light. The reason why healing medicine is so precious is because everyone has a need for it. As a doctor, saving others is part of my duty. Besides, the Hallmaster's conditions are not unjust to me. In this way, I will have the Hallmaster as my backer in the future. Why not? Long Yanwei, who had been very puzzled, finally understood after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's explanation. After hearing the reasons that the latter had listed out, he understood that the biggest reason why Bailey Hongzhuang had chosen to do this was because everyone wanted to protect the Shengxian continent. He could not help but feel shocked. It seems that he does not understand Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three well enough. He never thought that they would have such a selfless side to them. In this place where almost everyone placed their own interests above all else, it was rare for Bailey Hongzhuang to make such a decision. The Hall Master will be very happy when he hears this news. A smile appeared in Long Yanwei's eyes. Previously, the Hall Master was worried that his appearance would pressure you all, so he left first. Your decision has really surprised us. As he spoke, Long Yanwei's eyes lit up, and he continued, I've already asked for 4 fire fruits from the Hall Master. Furthermore, the Hall Master will also give you some rewards. Aside from that, if you need anything else, you can also ask the Hall Master. You've made such a great contribution. I'm sure that the Hall Master will not refuse. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen raised their eyebrows. However, when they saw Long Yanwei's treacherous look, they could not help but find it funny. It seems that the Hall Master was not the only one who liked to rob Long Yanwei. Long Yanwei also liked to take advantage of the Hall Master. Yanwei, you're not just protecting your disciples. If the Hall Master sees you like this, he'll probably feel extremely helpless. Zihua sighed. Previously, Long Yanwei had already placed great importance on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had handed over the prescription, it was even more incredible. Even if the Hall Master is here, he will agree. Long Yanwei chuckled. Earlier, Palace Master was lamenting that the Demon Training Tower had actually produced such a genius doctor. Now that our Penglai Palace has also produced a genius doctor, Palace Master doesn't have to envy the Demon Training Tower anymore. Zihua nodded. That's true. For so long, only the Magic Training Tower's healing medicine had a certain effect on dark energy. I didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine would have an even better effect. No one would be more depressed than the 100 Flowers Gate once the news got out. The 100 Flower Gate has always been known for its alchemy and medical skills. Who would have thought that it would be the Demon Training Tower first, and then our Penglai Palace? This is quite embarrassing for the 100 Flower Gate. Listening to the conversation between the two, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's expressions suddenly became interesting. Thinking back, the 100 Flower Gate had tried their best to invite them to join. However, not only did they not join the 100 Flower Gate, they joined the Penglai Palace instead. If the 100 Flower Gate knew that the healing medicine this time was produced by Bailey Hongzhuang, they would probably be very depressed. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's strange expressions, Long Yanwei could not help but ask curiously, What's wrong? Why do the two of you have such expressions? Chapter 3679. Am I wrong? Long Yanwei asked doubtfully. Di Beichen chuckled, and his handsome face became even more dazzling. Even though Long Yanwei and Zihua were men, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This kind of appearance was really monstrous. Master Long, the genius doctor of the Demon Training Tower that you mentioned, is actually Hongzhuang. Following Di Beichen's words, Long Yanwei couldn't help but be startled. For a moment, he couldn't react. Immediately after, his pupils dilated as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. The doctor of the Demon Training Tower is you? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said calmly, That's right, it's me. I remember now. Long Yanwei's eyes lit up. When I recruited you, you said that you wanted to return to the Demon Training Tower. So that's how it is. At that time, we were preparing to return to the Demon Training Tower to gain experience. However, after being recruited by you, we did not return to the Demon Training Tower. In that case, didn't I accidentally recruit the genius doctor of the Demon Training Tower? Steward Qin of the Demon Training Tower must be so angry that he stomped his feet. Long Yanwei was astonished. He never thought that the cultivator that he had his eyes on was actually the genius doctor that everyone was talking about. That was a delicious cake that everyone was fighting to recruit. He actually didn't know that he had recruited him. If it was said that before, everyone felt that it was a waste for Long Yanwei to pay the price of 3 demon pet eggs to recruit them back. Presumably, now that everyone knew the real situation, they would no longer have such a feeling. On the contrary, everyone would feel that this deal was really worth it. We didn't go back, so we don't know what kind of mood Steward Qin is in. However, based on how much importance Steward Qin placed on Hongzhuang, I'm afraid that is indeed the case. The corner of Di Baichen's mouth slightly raised. Bailey Hongzhuang's position in the demon training tower was already very high, and Steward Qin wanted to use all kinds of resources to obtain the prescription from Bailey Hongzhuang. Thinking about it, they had not returned after leaving this time. So Steward Qin must be very anxious in his heart. However, they didn't plan to stop going to the demon training tower in the future. After all, they still had to find a way to obtain the inheritance of the demon training tower. Right now, they were just trying their best to increase their cultivation and increase their chances of success. Wait! Izihua raised his right hand and walked to the center of Di Baichun and the others. There was still a trace of doubt in his eyes. I'm a little confused. You mean to say that the medicine from before was made by Bailey Hongzhuang? That's right. Hongzhuang is the genius doctor that you've been longing for, Long Yanwei said with a smile. It can't be. Even with Izihua's indifference at this moment, he could not help but open his mouth wide. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? It is indeed a coincidence. Izihua immediately gave Long Yanwei a thumbs up. I take back what I said before. Yanwei, your eyesight is simply superb. It's fine if you don't make a move, but the moment you make a move, you've directly recruited the genius doctor that the Hall Master has been longing for. I was wondering why you were able to make such a healing medicine. Now, I finally understand. Izihua sighed, thinking about it. Other than the people from the Demon Training Tower, no one else knew that this genius doctor was actually so young. I can guarantee that when the Hall Master finds out about this news, he will definitely be overjoyed. Chapter 3680. Everything was just as Long Yanwei and Izihua had expected. When Bai Tsaming found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was the doctor he had been sighing about, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually agreed, he was even more overjoyed. Bailey Hongzhuang really agreed? Bai Tsaming was still in disbelief. Although he had placed all his hopes on Long Yanwei, he still felt that it was unbelievable when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had really agreed, because this was indeed not an easy matter to decide on. Long Yanwei nodded and took out an envelope from his bosom and handed it to Bai Tsaming. She has already left behind this prescription. Palace Master, Bailey Hongzhuang has already done this. You have to think about it carefully. If you mistreat her, it would be too unreasonable. Bai Tsaming took the envelope in astonishment. After opening it and glancing through it, he couldn't help but nod. Indeed, Bailey Hongzhuang is so cooperative. I will definitely not mistreat her. Yanwei, I really didn't expect that you would have such good eyesight when recruiting Cultivator. I previously heard that the 100 Flowers Gate was trying their best to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang, but they didn't succeed. At that time, I was still wondering where this genius doctor had been recruited by. I didn't expect that she would actually come to our Penglai Palace. In that case, you have also made a great contribution. Palace Master, since you feel that I've also made a great contribution, shouldn't you return the demon pet eggs that you robbed from me? Long Yanwei raised his eyebrows. I paid such a huge price to recruit the genius doctor that you have been longing for. You have the nerve to rob the demon pet eggs from me? Hearing that, Bai Tsaming's expression froze for a moment, then he smiled brightly. These demon pet eggs can't be taken back. I have even reserved their master. I should indeed thank you for this matter. However, with our many years of friendship, we are well aware of some things. If you need my help in the future, just tell me directly. Long Yanwei rolled his eyes when he saw Bai Tsaming's expression that seemed as if he intended to go back on his word. He'd known Bai Tsaming for so many years, and he was extremely familiar with Bai Tsaming's methods. Speaking of which, why did Bailey Hongzhuang refuse the 100 Flowers Gate's invitation? Izihua frowned. Previously, when I tried to recruit them, they didn't plan to pay attention to me at all. Even if I brought out the reputation of Penglai Island, they were still unmoved. It could be seen that they didn't have any thoughts about joining forces. It was only when I said that I wanted to give them demon pet eggs that they began to be moved. Come to think of it, if I didn't offer the condition of the demon pet egg, then it would definitely be impossible to recruit them back. Long Yanwei shrugged. Thinking back to when he was rejected, he felt very embarrassed. However, now that he knew that the 100 Flowers Gate was also rejected, he felt much better. In my opinion, This Bailey Hongzhuang most likely focused on cultivation instead of medical skills. It is precisely because of this that she refused the invitation of the 100 Flowers Gate. Otherwise, no doctor or alchemist would refuse. Think about it carefully. Bailey Hongzhuang has been in the Penglai Palace for quite some time. She has been training like other cultivators. If it wasn't for this prescription being taken out this time, many people might not even know her identity as a doctor. Chapter 3681. The Palace Master is right. Bailey Hongzhuang did not focus on cultivation. Yizihuan nodded, but his expression became interesting at the same time. If that's the case, Bailey Hongzhuang did not focus on medical skills at all, but she was still able to achieve this. Her talent in medical skills is too amazing. Bai Congming and the other two looked at each other. If they thought about it carefully, this was really terrifying. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan returned to their residence, they were greeted by Wen Ziren and Shangguan Yingying. Both of them looked curious. How is it? What did you say? Let's talk inside. Di Beichan smiled faintly. So you've handed this prescription to the palace master? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's right. We've already made this plan long ago. This way, it'll be much more convenient. Ziren thought for a moment, then nodded. You're right. 20% of the profit is already very high. With Penglai Palace's ability, once this healing medicine is sold to the outside world, the sales will definitely be huge. Although it's only 20%, the number you'll receive will definitely be very shocking. Indeed, the corners of Di Beichan's lips raised slightly. From the perspective of Penglai Palace, this ratio is indeed very high. I think the Palace Lord should be giving us special preferential treatment because of Lord Long. At first, he was very surprised when he heard this condition. From the perspective of a force, it was usually impossible to offer such a high ratio. Master Long is indeed very good to us. He has been taking care of us since we came here. Shangguan Yingying's eyes shone with joy. Now that you've handed this prescription over, I think your status in Penglai Palace will be very different in the future. Even if we don't hand this prescription over, our status will already be different. You can see it from the attitude of the inner palace disciples. Ziren chuckled. We don't have any enemies in the outer palace now. Basically, no one will dare to cause trouble for us, right? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly lit up, and then she took out 2 fiery red fruits from her bosom. This is what Master Long just gave us. What's this? Shangguan Yingying looked at the 2 bright red fruits, her face full of curiosity. The 2 fruits were fiery red in color, and there was a flowing luster flickering within them. At a glance, one could tell that they were filled with rich energy. Fire fruit. This is the fiery fruit. When Ziren was surprised. Supposedly, this fiery fruit is capable of tempering one's cultivation, and it's even capable of assisting a cultivator's cultivation to advance a step further. It's a treasure that practically all cultivators pursue, but it's extremely difficult to come by, and even the Cloud's Word sect doesn't possess such a treasure. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. You have a good eye. Of course. Although I'm not as good at distinguishing medicinal herbs as you are, I know a lot about heaven and earth treasures. A trace of pride appeared between Wen Ziren's brows. He had studied these treasures in the past. This is what Lord Long got from the Palace Lord for us. With this fiery fruit, our strength can be improved. Di Beichan said aloud. Chapter 3682. Master Long is indeed very good to you. This fiery fruit must be a very precious treasure in Penglai Palace. Ordinary cultivators would never be able to obtain it. Shangguan Yingying's tone was filled with envy, but her smile was very sincere. However, you have made such a great contribution this time. It is only right that you receive such a reward. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Indeed, with these fiery fruits, our cultivation can take another step forward. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang handed the fiery fruit to Shangguan Yingying. You must also take advantage of the medicinal power of this fiery fruit to break through to the 6th level of the purple realm. Looking at the 2 fiery fruits in her hands, Shangguan Yingying could not help but be stunned. Us? Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, as if it was the right thing to do. Master Long gave us a total of 4 fiery fruits. It is just enough for the four of us. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to break through to the 6th level of the purple realm. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying and Wen Ziren could not help but look at each other in surprise. They had only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had fiery fruits. They did not expect that the two of them would also have fiery fruits. This healing medicine was developed by you. The two of us did not help you at all. How can we accept such an expensive thing? Ziren waved his hand. His attitude was very firm. Speaking of which, ever since they had arrived at Penglai Island, Bailey Hongzhuang and her husband had already helped them a lot. This fiery fruit was very precious. If they accepted it just like that, it would be too shameless. We are a team. Naturally, everyone should have a share of this. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. In her heart, the four of them were already a team. The improvement of the team was her improvement. Ziren is right. Shangguan Yingying also said, Hongzhuang, you've already helped us a lot. We can't accept this kind of thing anymore. Looking at Shangguan Yingying and Ziren's resolute faces, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichun. After all, Di Beichun and the other two had grown up together, so there was no need to worry so much. Hongzhuang has already put it this way. Why do you refuse? Di Beichun's expression was gentle. Don't we share blessings and misfortunes together? Don't tell me that you don't want to share the burden with us in the future. Beichun, you know that's not what we meant, Ziren said. Di Beichun's lips curved slightly. Since that's not what you meant, then there's no need to say anything more. Just accept it. Otherwise, it means that you're not willing to treat each other with sincerity. Ziren's lips froze. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't. He looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying, then nodded and said, All right, no more pleasantries. Everything depends on action. That's right. Di Beichun patted Ziren's shoulder. We've known each other for so many years. There's no need to be so formal. You should take advantage of this fire fruit's medicinal power to break through to the 6th level of the purple realm as soon as possible. Otherwise, it won't be easy for you to catch up to my cultivation. Ziren rolled his eyes. So what if I break through to the 6th level of the purple realm? You might break through to the 7th level of the purple realm directly. I won't be able to catch up to you then. Although you won't be able to catch up, it's still better than the gap widening. Di Beichun chuckled. Chapter 3683. The four of them each took a fiery fruit and went into seclusion. Since they had obtained such a treasure, it was better to consume it as soon as possible. The tempering process after consuming the fiery fruit was not something that could be completed in a short period of time. It would take at least a few days because cultivators who had reached the purple realm had a lot of elemental energy stored in their bodies. Naturally, it would take a long time to purify all the impurities. For cultivators, the longer the tempering time, the better. This way, the tempering would be more thorough. Long Yanwei was not surprised when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had gone into seclusion. However, the auction was still organized. It was an internal auction of Penglai Palace. There was only one item to be auctioned, healing medicine. Although there was only one item to be auctioned, the cultivators of Penglai Palace were still enthusiastic. They were even more enthusiastic than when they attended the auction on a normal day. Before Bailey Hongzhuang went into seclusion, she had already handed over the auction to Long Yanwei. She did not intend to participate. Long Yanwei also smiled and agreed. He would just wait for the auction to end and give the points to Bailey Hongzhuang. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three came out of seclusion, the auction had already ended. It seems that all of us have done well. We have all successfully reached the 6th level of the purple realm. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wen Ziren and Shangguan Yingying in front of her. She could feel that everyone's aura had strengthened. Shangguan Yingying's face was filled with a joyful smile. Yes, we were still some distance away from breaking through the 6th level of the purple realm. Now, with the help of the fiery fruit, we have directly broken through. Not only that, the elemental energy in our bodies seems to have become stronger after the tempering. This fiery fruit is indeed a treasure. Indeed, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. The purer the elemental energy, the more stable our foundation will be. It will be helpful for our future advancement. Beichun, Have you broken through to the 7th level of the purple realm? Xiren's gaze fell on Debachin. At this moment, Debachin's aura was completely restrained, so he could not determine. Hearing this, Debachin smiled and nodded. Seeing this, Xiren couldn't help but cover his face with one hand and said helplessly, "It seems that it's not easy for me to catch up to you." After consuming the fire fruit, he had successfully broken through to the 6th level of the purple realm, but there was still a long way to go before he could break through to the 7th level of the purple realm. Debachin had now successfully broken through to the 7th level of the purple realm. Although it was only a single level of difference, the difference in elemental energy was significant. The future is long. Perhaps there will be a chance in the future. Debachin raised his eyebrows. Although he was comforting Xiren, he did not believe that Xiren would have such an opportunity. By the way, Hongzhuang. Shangguan Yingying walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and said, "We have been in seclusion for a few days. I think the auction should be over by now." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "It was held 3 days ago. It has already ended. We will know when we go to Master Long's place later." The rules of the auction had already been set. Cultivators would exchange points for points. It didn't matter whether she was there or not, so there was no need to waste any time. "I think there must be a lot of points this time." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "After we get these points, I plan to take a look at the resource room and see if I can find some suitable cultivation resources." Chapter 3684. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words of concern, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a lotus-like smile. "Yingying, I understand. I just want to see if there are any treasures that can improve my mental strength. Now that my cultivation is improving at a good speed, the improvement of my mental strength is slightly slow. So, I want to find treasures in this area to improve." She usually did not spend much time on alchemy, but her alchemy skills have been steadily improving. That was because her mental strength was much stronger than cultivators of the same cultivation. However, during this period of time, the improvement of her mental strength had been slower than her cultivation. If this continued, it would not be a good sign. So, she thought of this method. Compared to treasures that could improve cultivation, treasures that could improve mental strength were much rarer. However, Penglai Palace was a top force. She felt that there might be some. "I see." Shangguan Ying suddenly understood. Although this kind of treasure is hard to find, with Penglai Palace's foundation, they should still have some. "I don't know. We'll know when we see it tomorrow. Then I'll go with you." "Okay." Then, Bailey Hongzhuang and Debachin went to Long Yanwei's palace. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying's figures, Long Yanwei's eyes suddenly filled with a smile. "You guys have been in seclusion for a longer time than I thought. It seems that the harvest is not bad. This is all thanks to Sir's help. Otherwise, it would have taken us a long time to improve." Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands. Long Yanwei smiled and waved his hand. "Although I helped, it was mainly because of your own ability. If it were not for you guys concocting this healing medicine, I would not have been able to get this fiery fruit from the palace master. No matter what, we will remember Sir Long's care in our hearts. We dare not forget." Debachin's deep eyes flashed with sincerity. On Penglai Island, he was only grateful to 2 people. One was Di Yujue, who saved him, and the other was Long Yanwei. The effect of this auction is very good. The number of points obtained from the auction is not small. I have already instructed someone to transfer these points to your points card. Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. "There are many treasures in the Penglai Palace's resource room. You can use these points to exchange for what you need." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She didn't think that Long Yanwei had directly transferred the points to her point plate. After coming out of seclusion, she didn't even notice the changes on her point plate. Now that she glanced at it, her pupils couldn't help but dilate a little, and the astonishment on her face became even more obvious. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's astonished expression, Long Yanwei couldn't help but laugh. "Isn't this number more than you think?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Indeed, it's much more than I expected. You still underestimated the importance of this healing medicine in the hearts of the Inner Palace disciples. If you had also participated in this auction, you would have understood everyone's eagerness." Long Yanwei smiled faintly. This prescription is too important to everyone in Penglai Palace. Therefore, the Palace Master has decided to directly grant you the status of Inner Palace Disciples. Following Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were both stunned. Become Inner Palace Disciples? Chapter 3685. Cultivators who have made outstanding contributions to the Penglai Palace can be directly promoted to Inner Palace Disciples. Originally, only you, Bailey Hongzhuang, had this qualification. However, this healing medicine is too important for Inner Palace cultivators. In addition, we considered that you are a team and it would not be appropriate to separate you. In addition, the four of you are not weak. Therefore, we have decided to let you all become Inner Palace Disciples together. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun could not help but look at each other. Originally, they wanted to participate in the Inner Palace Disciple Assessment. They did not expect that they would be able to become Inner Palace Disciples without the assessment. However, becoming Inner Palace Disciples is not only a motivation for you, but also a pressure. The Inner Palace Disciples are usually much stronger than the Outer Palace Disciples. Since you are joining as an exception, it is inevitable that you will attract some attention. According to my judgment, the Inner Palace Disciples know that the healing medicine was developed by you and will not target you. Therefore, there is no need to worry too much. After all, from another perspective, you are their saviors. We understand. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun nodded. Thank you, Palace Master and Master Long. The Palace Master has been in a good mood recently. He originally planned to tell you the rewards personally. However, after knowing that you were in seclusion, he did not disturb you and directly handed the rewards to me. As he spoke, Long Yanwei took out a Chinquin bag and handed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. This is the reward the Palace Master gave you. There must be a lot of treasures inside. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She did not expect the Palace Master to give her other rewards. Presumably, the rewards given by the Palace Master would not be bad. From today onwards, you are Inner Palace Disciples. Later, pack your things and you can live in the Inner Palace. As for the training grounds, due to your current cultivation bases, you can decide where you want to train. Usually, the cultivation of Inner Palace Disciples has reached Purple Realm 7th level and above. With your current cultivation, there is still a gap. It is more dangerous to enter the training ground of the Inner Palace. I think there is no need to rush in for the time being. Thank you for your concern, Master Long. We understand. I believe that you all know what to do. In any case, consider it yourselves. Long Yanwei smiled faintly. If there are no problems, you can go back and rest. At this moment, Di Beichun suddenly said, Master Long, we plan to leave Penglai Palace for a while. Leave Penglai Palace? Long Yanwei frowned in confusion. Where are you going? Back then, when we went to the Demon Training Tower, we had wanted to try and see if we could obtain the Demon Training Tower's legacy. However, back then, our cultivation bases were not high enough. Now that our cultivation bases have increased, it just so happens that we cannot go to the training grounds of the Inner Palace for the time being. Thus, we plan on going to the Demon Training Tower. Di Beichun had a serious expression. They had never given up on the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda. Now that they had some free time, it was also extremely suitable for them to go to the Devil Training Tower to explore. If they could obtain the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda, then they would have some additional means when they came to this training ground. Chapter 3686. I see. Long Yanwei came to a realization. Penglai Palace doesn't stop cultivators from going out. Usually, many cultivators want to go to the Demon Training Tower. You guys can go, but be careful. Yes. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Ying returned to their residence, they mentioned their plan to Xiren and Wen Xiren immediately agreed. We really should go back to the Demon Training Tower. Although we don't know if we can get the inheritance, we have to try. Shangwan Ying nodded. We are now cultivators of the 6th level of the Purple Realm. We don't have to worry about others discovering our cultivation and not daring to reveal our identities. Think about how sullen we were before. This time we can go back openly. Looking at Wen Xiren and Shangwan Ying's excited faces, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was as bright as a flower. Then this time, we will go back as Penglai Palace's inner palace disciples. Now, they were no longer the rookies they were when they first came to Penglai Island. They needed to be careful everywhere. Moreover, with the identity of Penglai Palace's disciples, they were no longer the same as before. When do we leave? Shangguan Ying was in high spirits. She could not wait to return to Penglai Palace. We have to pack up now and then go to the inner palace to find a new residence, Di Beichan said slowly. Also, Hong Zhuang needs to go to the resource hall to find the treasure she needs. We will leave in 2 days. Hearing this, Xiren nodded. Okay. The four of them quickly packed up and followed the cultivator who came to guide them to the inner palace. As the four of them walked all the way to the inner palace, they suddenly realized that the inner palace was at the back of Penglai Palace. It was different from the outer palace disciples. This was the real center. Not only was the location different, but even the buildings were slightly different. They were more reserved and noble. Judging from the buildings, the number of inner palace disciples is indeed much less than the outer palace disciples. When Xiren looked around, however, the inner palace disciples are indeed stronger. I haven't seen anyone with a weaker aura than me. Di Beichan's expression was calm and reserved. He lowered his voice and said, "The inner palace disciple assessment requires cultivators of the 7th level of the purple realm and above. It's natural that you haven't seen any cultivators with a weaker aura than you. So, you need to be more careful in the future. If you're surrounded by inner palace's cultivators, it will not be the same as when you were in the outer palace. 7th level of the 7th level of the purple realm." I, two, two. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed and patted Wen Xiren's shoulder. There is always a mountain higher than the other. Just get used to it. The inner palace cultivators looked at them curiously. Isn't that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three? Why are they in the inner palace? Haven't you heard? Bailey Hongzhuang gave the prescription of the healing medicine to the palace master and made a great contribution. Therefore, the palace master made an exception and accepted them as inner palace disciples. Chapter 3687. Although they haven't been in the Penglai Palace for long, their presence is stronger than those of us who have been in the inner palace for several years. Who in the entire Penglai Palace doesn't know their names? What you said is true. I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills to be so experienced. With that healing medicine, our safety will be greatly improved. I can understand the palace master's approach. 100 Flowers Gate hasn't been able to develop it until now, but our Penglai Island has. Isn't this the pride of our Penglai Island? That's true, but the person who developed this healing medicine is Bailey Hongzhuang. The people behind her are completely basking in her glory. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were a walking topic. No matter where they went, it was inevitable that they would be talked about. It's just that when everyone was talking about it, when Xiren's face couldn't help but be a little ugly. Speaking of which, his achievements in Penglai Palace were indeed inseparable from Bailey Hongzhuang. For this, his heart was already very guilty. At this moment, when everyone mentioned it in front of him, his mood was naturally very complicated. Di Beichan noticed the change in Xiren's mood and hugged Xiren with his big hand. These people are all envious and jealous. If you care about it because of this, then it's not fair. Yeah, aren't they envious that we have a friend like Hongzhuang? Shangguan Ying chuckled. I'm very calm. What's the big deal? They're all envious. When Xiren, who was originally a little depressed, couldn't help but laugh after hearing what Shangguan Ying said. You guys are too shameless to comfort yourselves like this. Shameless is the only way to have a bright future, Xiaohe said with a smile. Under the guidance of the person who came, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three people came to their living area. As soon as they walked into the house, they found that the room was obviously more spacious and bright than the residence in the outer palace. Even the decorations inside were more meticulous. It was obviously not on the same level. The treatment of inner palace disciples is indeed different. Just the living area alone is much more luxurious. Shangguan Ying walked to the side and sat down. With their encounters in the Penglai Palace, the living environment was constantly improving. This place is indeed more comfortable to live in, and the concentration of primary energy here seems to have increased. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Xiren looked at the environment in front of him and said, although the living area is good, most of the time we are busy training. The time we live here is really too short. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two looked at each other and then sighed. This is true. I think the other disciples in the inner hall are the same as us. Hongzhuang, shall we go to the resource room to take a look later? Shangguan Yingying suggested. I also want to see what kind of rich cultivation resources the Penglai Palace's resource room has. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Xiren, are you guys going? We won't be going. Xiren waved his hand. We are inner palace disciples now. Beichen and I'll go find Senior Run and the others. After all, we plan to leave in 2 days. We probably won't be back for a while. Chapter 3688. After making their decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three walked out of the house together and prepared to head to their respective residences. However, not long after they walked out of the house, they suddenly saw an unexpected figure. Ao Ling Xiao. Xiren looked at the figure in front of him in surprise. Why are you here? Compared to Xiren's surprise, Ao Ling Xiao was very calm. When Xiren, we meet again. I've also become an inner palace disciple. We can often meet again in the future. Listening to Ao Ling Xiao's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's faces were filled with astonishment. When did you become an inner palace disciple? It doesn't seem like it's the time for the inner palace disciple assessment. With Ao Ling Xiao's strength, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not doubt that he had the strength to become an inner palace disciple. They could tell that Ao Ling Xiao was very strong from their previous experience together. However, it was not the time for the inner palace disciple assessment. Even if he had such strength, he had to pass the assessment first. Ao Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows. I've passed the inner palace disciple assessment long ago. It's just that I've never been interested in entering the inner palace, so I stayed in the outer palace. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were stunned again when they heard that. However, they understood in their hearts. From beginning to end, Ao Ling Xiao was not interested in the inner hall. The reason why he appeared here was nothing more than his interest in Di Beichun. It seemed that Ao Ling Xiao wanted to be a follower to the end. Although you become an inner palace disciple now, we can't train together for the time being. Di Beichun smiled faintly. We still have some things to do, so we'll be leaving first. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two followed behind Di Beichun and left together. Ao Ling Xiao was puzzled by Di Beichun's words, but he did not ask. Now, I feel that this Ao Ling Xiao is becoming more and more strange. Every outer palace disciple yearns to become an inner palace disciple. Moreover, he has clearly passed the test, yet he still insists on staying in the outer palace. Using normal logic to explain, this is truly inexplicable. Shangguan Yingying shook her head and frowned. She really couldn't see through this inexplicable guy. Maybe people with ability have such a bad taste. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands, but her expression was very calm. In her previous life, she also knew a lot of people with weird personalities. Perhaps they felt that life wasn't interesting enough, so they added some color to it. Now that you mention it, it's even stranger. Since he's not interested in what everyone else is interested in, why is he so interested in Beichen? Shangguan Yingying's eyes fell on Di Beichen. After pondering for a moment, she suddenly widened her eyes. Could it be that Ao Ling Xiao is gay? PFFF. After hearing this, Xiren, who was walking, couldn't control his emotions. Then he choked on his own saliva. Cough, cough, cough. Yingying, aren't your thoughts a bit too exaggerated? However, Shangguan Yingying said in a serious tone, I think my thoughts are very reasonable. You see, with Beichen's appearance, normal people would be mesmerized. If this Ao Ling Xiao is gay, then isn't it normal for him to fancy Beichen? Chapter 3689. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was a bit strange. She couldn't help but look at Di Beichen beside her. Just as Shangguan Yingying had said, Di Beichen's appearance was enough to charm anyone. Even a woman wouldn't be able to have such a good-looking face, yet it was on a man's face. Thinking back to the first time she saw Di Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned. Even after seeing it so many times, she still felt that it was a face that could enchant people. Xiren originally wanted to refute Shangguan Yingying, but after hearing the latter's impeccable reasoning, he didn't know how to refute. What Yingying said seems to make some sense. Xiren looked at Di Beichun doubtfully. Feeling Xiren's curious gaze, Di Beichun's face suddenly became gloomy. He had lived for so long, and it was normal for women to take a fancy to him. However, this was the first time a man had taken a fancy to him. "Why are you looking at me like that?" His low voice carried a bit of threat and warning. Xiren touched his head and smiled brightly. "Hee, I naturally know that you don't have such thoughts." Di Beichun's face darkened. Shangguan Yingying walked to Di Beichun's side and said, "Beichun, I'm telling the truth. Although there are only a few people in the Shengxian continent who have such fetishes, they really do exist. You haven't encountered it before, but it doesn't mean that you won't encounter it now. In fact, with your face, it's very normal for you to encounter such a situation." Di Beichun's face darkened even more. "You see, that Ao Ling Xiao has always been alone. He's not interested in anyone. Hong Zhuang is a first-class beauty, right? But he didn't pay much attention to Hong Zhuang at all. He made it clear from the beginning that he was paying attention to you." Shangguan Yingying patted her forehead. "I finally understand. What do you understand?" Di Beichun gritted his teeth and asked, "Didn't Ao Ling Xiao say that he wasn't sure about one thing? If he's sure, he'll tell us. It seems like it's his first time liking a man, so he's suffering in his heart. But he can't bear to give up on you. So he's been following you and thinking about whether he really likes men." Shangguan Yingying could not hide the excitement on her face. She looked as if she had discovered a new continent. She looked at Xiren and Bailey Hongzhuang excitedly and said, "Do you think my analysis makes sense?" "Puchi." Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. She didn't know how Shangguan Yingying's imagination went wild. She actually thought of such a possibility. At this time, Di Beichun said in a deep voice, "Xiren, I think you need to take care of Yingying. What is she researching all day long? Be careful when she find a man to pair you up with. After all, your face is also a feast for the eyes." Wen Ziran, who was originally snickering, heard Di Beichun's words and couldn't help but stare blankly, suddenly unable to continue laughing. In the next second, Di Beichun pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and walked forward. "It seems that I have to keep my wife away from Yingying. Otherwise, it's not worth it if she's led astray." Shangguan Yingying looked at Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang's back in astonishment. She quickly said, "Hey, wait for us." However, Xiren pulled Shangguan Yingying's hand and said, "Yingying, tell me, where did you learn this from?" Chapter 3690. Bailey Hongzhuang walked beside Di Beichun. Looking at his stiff and awkward face, she couldn't hide the smile on her lips. "Wife, do you think it's funny?" Di Beichun raised his eyebrows and asked. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and nodded. "Haha, it's funny. I think Yingying's words make sense." "Wife, you've been led astray by Yingying." "Beichun, what if it's really as Yingying guessed? What will you do?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun with a smile. She rarely saw Di Beichun so embarrassed. It was really interesting. Thinking about it, if all of this was true, she really didn't know what Di Beichun would do. "I'll kill him," Di Beichun said lightly. "Uff." Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. "Haha, I hope Ao Ling Xiao doesn't really have such thoughts." On the other side, achoo, achoo. Ao Ling Xiao sneezed a few times in a row. He rubbed his nose and his face was full of doubts. "Is there someone talking about me today? Why do I keep sneezing? It's really strange." Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying came to the resource room together. The Penglai Palace's resource room could be called a resource hall. The scope was undoubtedly much larger than they had imagined. Penglai Palace's foundation is really extraordinary. Just by looking at this resource hall, you can tell that there must be a lot of treasures inside. Shangguan Yingying's face was full of emotion. She had long felt that this place was definitely not simple. Now it seemed that she was right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "I hope there are treasures here that I need." "I think there should be." Shangguan Ying smiled faintly. This place is so big. The number of treasures inside seems to be quite a lot. Although the treasures that you need to improve your spiritual power are not many, with the foundation of Penglai Palace, they should still exist. Hearing this, the smile on Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips widened a little. I hope it's really as you expect. To Bailey Hong Zhuang, spiritual power was undoubtedly extremely important. Whether it was alchemy, inscription, or other skills, they were all inseparable from one's spiritual force. The reason why she was able to master these skills was because of her outstanding spiritual force. It was precisely because her mental strength was very strong that she was able to achieve twice the result with half the effort when learning these things. Otherwise, even if her talent was very good, it would be very difficult for her to reach this step. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen arrived at the resource room, they discovered that it was also a very lively place. At this moment, there were many cultivators inside, choosing the cultivation resources they needed. The layout of the resource room was very simple. Rows of shelves were placed with different levels of treasures. The bottom of each treasure was marked with its name, function, and points needed to exchange for it. The closer to the back of the counter, the higher the value of the treasure. Similarly, the more points needed to exchange for it. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at it and directly gave up on the several counters in front of her. Resources that could improve one's spiritual power were more difficult to find than resources that could directly improve one's cultivation. She did not need to look at the low-level resources at all. If such a treasure really existed in the resource hall, then the points needed to exchange for it would not be small.